OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Yeah, it is OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show on Off the Ball on this unseasonably sunny early August morning. It's been beautiful to cycle in this morning. The lads are laughing already. Whitehall, Drumcondra sort of duo. Colin Buick, how are you?
Johnny Ward, what a pleasure.
Dan McDonald of the Irish Independent. How are you, Dan?
Johnny, Colin, how are you?
We have lots to discuss today. I'm going to start with you, Colin. What was your highlight of the weekend?
In general?
Yeah, like in life.
Went down to Cork.
Always a highlight.
Always a highlight. Went to a pub, right, that I've never been to before, which is actually a bit criminal. It's called Shinné.
In Cork?
Yeah.
And as opposed to the one Jeff Buckley was famous in, or the one on the Quays?
Yeah, neither of those. Yeah. So this one in Cork.
Just throwing it out there.
One.
And you see, McCurtain Street in Cork has come on leaps and bounds.
Named after
decade.
the hunger striker.
And that's on the, so you go up Bridge Street, that's on the right hand side, and then Shinné's off to the left. And for whatever reason over the years, now the people I were with were absolutely certain that I had been there before, but I don't think I had. Anyway, great spot. Sure, there's plenty of people out there who've been there, but I'd say that was the highlight. Went down also to see my sister, and my niece came over from England. That was up there too. That was a good highlight. And then on the sporting front, probably Cork hammering Waterford, because the in-laws of course are from Waterford.
Yeah, you spoke with the in-laws last week and your house movement, Dan. I'm sure you were interested because you've had a long North Dublin sort of house movement as well that's worked out well for yourself.
Well, I did move there like 4 years ago.
Took a while.
4 years ago. But now Colum's moved to the area. Yeah, Dublin 9, is it? Dublin 9, it's like... I mean, it's... I don't know what more we can add here to make this anything.
What's it like being a blow-in on the north side? Like,
scary.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a fish out of water. Like, I was 8 years on the south side, bear in mind, you know.
You're also from Cork, like you're a blow-in, as in, do you know what I mean?
Well, totally, yeah. And then, and someone said to me there, it's actually our own Jess Kelly colleague, who was like, you're a dub now, like you live in Dublin, like you bought a house. But I've never felt less like a dub.
Why is that?
I suppose I'm fighting against it, like.
Yeah.
I'm fighting against the reality that I just bought a house in Dublin.
Well, I'm 23 years in Dublin.
Are you?
Going on 24, and I was like 17 in East Galway. But I'm a Galwegian in my head.
Yeah.
Galway, like.
I think you'd become prouder. It's like people who say they live in Australia or Canada or America. If you're Irish, you feel even more Irish. It's kind of feel even more Cork. But sure, I'm only down there like 2 or 3 times a year.
And the beauty is as well, neither Colin or I has lost the accent that we had, as opposed to Dan.
Yeah,
basically a posh Dublin accent now.
I don't know about that, but yeah, no, I'm the same as you. Like 24 years this year,
next
year, and like you're more than half your life. And then like if you have you have a little one who is definitely a dub, then you realise it's changed.
Nathan Murphy bringing the kids to Tala and all that.
Tala and and you see all these. You see, well, this is the point. I mean, this is, we're not going back to the Dublin GAA point, but obviously you see all these. Like you might know people who are like inter-county players or whoever, who've naturally life has taken them to Dublin, but all their kids are.
I remember being at a wedding in England, and the father of the bride was from. Basically from Mount Bellew in Galway, and all the kids had like real Manchester accents, and I said, like, what's it like being from where I'm from and your kids like sound like like proper Manchester accents? And he goes, I never actually noticed. It's just like they were just my kids, and that's just the way you just never noticed. And I was like, here we go, the Irish in Britain.
There's a part of me that thinks, well, inevitably I am going to move back to Cork.
Inevitably.
And that's the saving grace.
Can't say that though.
That's the saving grace.
But you see,
that's
Dublin is giving you a home here.
Dublin
is giving you a home, and you're like, I'm only here out of suffering. Like,
oh no, wait, it was actually Tim Robbins' character who talked about hope in Shawshank. Yeah. That's what you have. 19 years.
You're not in jail. You're living in Drumcondra, like.
Whitehall, yeah.
Whitehall.
But no, I feel like I will return home eventually, and that's what keeps me going. But for now, it's nice. It's a nice area.
You're living in Dublin, like, I mean,
you make it sound like you've been exiled to like a far part of the British Empire, like it's exactly. He's in Siberia thinking one day I'll get back to Moscow. Like I will be welcome back there one day.
Yeah, I'm embracing it for now.
I live in Harold's Cross and I love it. I love pretty much everything. The only thing it doesn't have is access to the see, but like everything else I love about
Now,
it.
how long have you been there specifically?
Few years, but like generally Dublin 8 sort of, technically it's Dublin 6, but I've been Dublin 8 for years, or like it's just over the canal.
Yeah.
And Harold's Cross is this mixture of local dyed-in-the-wool Harold's Cross people, lads like me who've come up from the country, and like a lot of foreigners, like a lot of the kind of Muslim community live there because it's near the mosque, so you have this real mixture of different and really good places to eat, like.
Yeah.
And the old dog track, which
you don't
really
strike me as someone who's pining for East Galway that much, though. Like, you know, people who would follow your life would see you again in a fine dining house of some description, and they're not thinking
possibly my own.
Deep down, he wishes he was.
Well, here's the
at
thing.
home on the land.
So here's the thing. So since I was a nipper in East Galway, my father sold the land to a fella from Cork. He then leased the land back to us, but I think there was some sort of issue where this couldn't happen, so he planted the land, which is quite sad, but it's turned into like a real wooded area now, so it's really like full of wildlife. So it's full of like deer, red squirrel, pine marten, foxes, anything you want, loads of birds. So it's like going home now is like therapy, like just getting away from the city, and I actually do love East Galway. Whether I could
live there, I don't think you could. No chance.
I think I could.
Really?
I actually think I could, because if you have Wi-Fi, it's honestly like...
So if you had Instagram, you could live there because you could chronicle the colour of your life. But otherwise, if all you had was to live there but you couldn't tell anyone about it, could you do it?
You know that crisis though when the Wi-Fi goes down, or like there's no access to 4G? That's the crisis of our time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh Jesus.
You're never more alone.
Yeah.
You're never more alone when you have no coverage.
Yeah. And like I get the train a lot, or even if you're in an airport, and like, God, if somebody hadn't access to his or her phone, the world has ended. Like, because like, God, you might have to talk to someone.
Come here now. Just before we get to the coming up, there, Kevin Callahan's on My Fashion Buzz. Nice top, Johnny. YouTube comments. It is a nice top.
I actually, there's a story which isn't, it's not really amusing, but there was the Instagram targeted ads I find are exceptionally good. And there was this like, it was like a t-shirt that was based on an old kind of VHS kind of theme. And I was like, that's a really cool t-shirt. So I went to buy it, but then it was like free postage if you spend so much, so I had to add on a couple of things, and this was one of them. That's basically, so it only came into being as like
consumer.
Do you know the way, like, remember when Big Jack went to, was it like he wanted to get Houghton and he got Aldo as well, or vice versa?
In Oxford, was it? Yeah,
so it was kind of like that. Like the other was like, oh, you might as well get him as well. Like
he's got an Irish Danny over there.
And I had like the shorts. I wore them all at Beyond the Pale. I wore the whole get up, and mixed reaction. That's what he said. Mainly from the missus. Like, this is a disgraceful outfit.
She had a mixed reaction.
Yeah, like she didn't throw up, like, but in her head she kind of did. Coming up in the show today,
There you go.
what does that say? Talk to the audience. So performance rankings, we're already gone over the time there. We're gonna talk about Man United in Dublin anyway. Let's definitely mention that. Alan Quinlan is going to talk about the Ireland-Italy game at the same venue. Yeah, lots to ruminate about there. How did the French players get on? Sarah Donovan's going to be on then more or less in the middle of the show to talk about a one-sided camogie final, albeit one that I think introduced the concept to some people of how good the sport could be, or certainly to me anyway. Andy Mitten was actually at the Aviva Stadium, so we're going to hear from him. Tim Clancy is in studio. Tim Clancy is one of these out-of-work managers who is pining to get back, or not, but was going to talk about Derry City in Europe and the League of Ireland. He only left, a couple of months ago. And then we'll hear at the end of the show from Gordon Darcy and James Downey, who were on yesterday. I guess it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it acceptable to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings.
I'm scratching my head. Performances with just lack that intensity.
Yeah, so if you're doing the performance rankings, Colin will say, okay, this is what it'll likely entail. Dan is notoriously hostile to other sports, so he's in the hot seat
That's
today.
not remotely true,
actually
to be clear. It's not remotely
notoriously
true.
hostile. Dan, where are we starting here?
No, well, I'm going to start with football.
Speaking of hostility.
How many football slots is there now? Okay. No, I mean, I really enjoy golf and horse racing and other sports, as you know. Aviva Stadium friendlies, yeah. Well, look, I was writing about this last week. I mean, and this was a reference to Manchester United in Dublin at the weekend. We see some nice pictures there of players. And look, it's a personal taste. This isn't one of these things of telling people how to live their lives. Like, people can choose to spend their money as they want, and it's not one of these up on the sort of giving a sermon about what people should do. It's not one of those. I actually think, like, it's actually, for some of those people, it must have been a very deeply frustrating experience on Saturday lunchtime when you see the team news coming through from Old Trafford, and Manchester United are playing a full strength team, or close to a full strength team in their game there, and you know then that the team that's coming to Dublin is not going to be the strongest one.
How much were the tickets for the Viva Stadium?
I think it was upwards of sort of, €75. You hear people talking about 110. That was premium.
Yeah.
So there's obviously different tiered prices, and kids tickets will be different prices. Now, these sold out within 10 minutes. This game. I mean, like, this is obviously the deep love and sort of passion that there is for Manchester United in Dublin, that they can sell it out. I mean, there's all sorts of football games in the Aviva that would be delighted that 40,000 people would go, and like, this is the first time here since 2017, and I understand it, and a lot of people would have bought those tickets on the basis of it being, you can imagine that the conversations people would have, or like parents with their kids, and it's not just parents with their kids, it's the one sometimes you
kids
go to.
Kids with their parents.
Yeah, but it's an element of, well, will I see Bruno, or will I see Rashford, or will I see whoever? And look, I mean, there's no suggestion that, like, Eric, Ten Hag or anything should be. It's not a case of saying, oh, well, that's a disgrace. I mean, they're just doing their job. The issue is the terms and conditions for the whole occasion. Like, the FAI are arranging these games, they're a completely free hit for them, in the sense they get a flat fee for hosting it. The organisers bring together the teams, and clearly in some cases for these friendlies, I remember in the past Barcelona coming here, there was a bit of a discussion about trying to get people would try and get terms and conditions in these friendlies that Messi has to play, or X amount of players have to play. Clearly there's no such terms and conditions here, and like, I know from the perspective of even, and no one cares about the press perspective, but you see the email coming out, apply for accreditation for this game, just note there will be no post-match press conference afterwards, and you're just looking at this going, these are just getting in and they're getting out, and there's no terms and conditions at all, there's no obligation, and there's a sense of the power of the name will mean that it will sell, and that's it. And it turned out that the tickets for the game on Old Trafford on Saturday were certainly 20% cheaper, I think, or they're certainly considerably cheaper. I actually spoke to David Sneyd the weekend, who's obviously with strong Manchester United connections. He spoke about a friend of his from Ireland who actually flew over to the game in Manchester, and all things considered, it would have been cheaper to do that trip than it would be for a lot of people, particularly coming from outside Dublin, to come to this game. As we know, not going into a cost of living stuff, and you get there, and look, you can't, maybe there's loads of people out there who went who'll say, no, we enjoyed our day, it was a good time, and we were around fellow fans, and got some nice photographs, and there was, that's fine, but like, these occasions never live up to it. Like, every time I see a pre-season friendly arranged in Dublin, I'm thinking, well, I need to figure out how not to go to that, because that's not going to be, it's not going to live up to the billing. But naturally, every time, it's not sold to people in that way.
Was it the
and they empty their pockets on a half truth, and there's a lot of unhappiness out there. And while technically no lies were told, again, they have no obligation, but clearly, like, it's been booked on the basis of just bring a team, it'll sell anyway. And it did. I think it's very unsatisfactory.
Was it the Amstel tournament all those years ago when Derry City were playing, and they were like, Newcastle United came over, and they ran for a couple of years, and I organised a bus from Galway to go up, because I was getting into League of Ireland at the time, and I wanted to go up and see Derry City, but everyone else came up to see Newcastle or Celtic or all these teams, and that was nowhere near sold out at the time. But this, I got like loads of demands for people who wanted tickets last week, as did Dan actually, and I was like, I didn't realise, I wasn't even aware of the friendly itself, but then I was like, there's still a massive Man United support in Ireland that want to see them. And like, back in the day, I would been like, follow your League of Ireland team, but like, it's each to their own. If you want to go up and see them, I actually did feel a bit sorry for a kid who wants to see Man United, and like, he's built up to the day, and then you just see everyone booing Harry Maguire.
Yeah, it's huge. Like, I got back into Houston at about 6 o'clock Sunday evening, and when I was walking out, it was just a sea of Manchester United jerseys going back to counties not from Dublin, basically. All families ranging from all age groups. Almost all of them too had the new jersey, which I thought was striking. It was like, the amount of money that this club accumulates. And so it is it's a debate right down the middle, because United don't owe anyone anything, you could argue, right? So they played Lons at Old Trafford on Saturday, and you look at the starting 11 there, and it was ominous for the following day, because it's a really strong team. Like that starting team that played against Lons in a 3-1 win could very feasibly be a team that United would put against Man City in the Manchester derby. So that looked bad, like, straight away. And then they go the next day and they get this massive money-making operation, because they're commercial colossus, United. They've been doing this for 20 plus years. They're way ahead of, like, if you look at the 90s, look at Anfield, was basically dilapidated in comparison to Old Trafford and the work that they did. Like, there's that famous game in, was it October 95? It was Cantona's first game back, when Fowler scored twice, and the stands there reconstructed.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it looked terrible at the time, but it was all like, think about the long term.
Since the Glazers came in, they've really maximised their commercial.
Yeah, but even before that, like under the previous regime, it was like the stadium was incredible, and now United have actually fallen behind in terms of the stadium, but the commercial enterprise just grew and grew and grew. Remember, after the treble, they released Beyond the Promised Land, I think was the video, which was like, it went huge, like people bought it everywhere. So you fast forward to the modern day, and like you said, Johnny, like, each to their own, and United have an absolutely massive support. And you get the average kid saying to their parents, I really want to go, bring me to this match. And there was still 1 or 2 stars that played. So the picture that we showed on screen was Jadon Sancho getting a selfie, one of the more expensive players the last few years. So that's the star that's there. And they have so many stars in the team, as in stars that kids will like, that it was probably justified to a lot of kids leaving the Aviva yesterday thinking, thank you so much for bringing me. But then the rest of us are looking at it from a footballing perspective. It was like, what was that all about? They had basically a festival of football over the weekend, where their headline act was on Saturday.
Yeah.
USA at the World Cup, Dan, is next.
Yeah, well, they're out.
Just never got going for them.
No, I mean, it was striking. I was looking before that game against Sweden on the weekend, and even just like even some of the betting markets and stuff, it was clear it was going to be a low scoring game. There was an anticipation that this was going to be a bit of a slog, and part of that is maybe on account of Sweden's reputation as much as anything. But yeah, I mean, like there's this sort of litany of shocks in the World Cup. I mean, England probably, we're sort of one penalty kick away from being in here too, because they really left it late against Nigeria, in the sense of, not left it late, they won on penalties, but they were hanging on in extra time with 10 players on the pitch, and they could have been gone too. And the whole competition seems to be opening up to the point where, like, I think Spain are the second favourites, having basically left 12 players at home due to a dispute coming up to the competition. So it's all falling apart, and USA are sort of like the traditional power that you think, okay, they're going to take control of the situation, and they're just gone. Their earliest exit, round of 16 on penalties. A lot of people may have seen the penalty kick incident where the ball sort of did it cross the line, the power of technology.
Can you explain it?
Well, it was the last penalty kick for the Swedish player, and
look at that.
It's on screen, there's the ball just over the line.
And
you cannot be serious.
The goalkeeper pushed it up, and it's actually, you need to watch it a couple of times to get a sense on what happened. And the player didn't even seem particularly sure that they'd scored this momentous, like, this is your David O'Leary moment here or something. Not quite maybe on that scale. Sweden are a top team, but like, it's still a momentous thing to knock America out of the World Cup, and you have this agonising delay while you wait for it to happen, and then it happens.
Was it the most underwhelming celebration of a momentous achievement in the history of anything? Because you have to wait so long.
It is,
and in live play as well, it really looked like the keeper saved it.
Yeah,
like it really did. Like, so I understand the delay by everyone.
You mentioned David O'Leary. Steve McGuinness had his 50th birthday celebration the other night. Ex-PFAI head Charlie O'Leary was at it.
Current PFAI head. Let's not retire him.
Charlie O'Leary.
Charlie O'Leary was there. He was, yeah.
What age is Charlie now?
God, he's pushing close to 100 territory. He lives in Dublin 9 as well, or that neck of the woods.
Who doesn't?
Great spot. One of our neighbours, I think.
Bet you Charlie doesn't disown it though.
Or he's maybe Dublin 5, but he's nearby. Yeah. But like he was there. Yeah, I mean, it's a slight tangent, but he is an incredibly powerful football figure. And he's still going strong, unlike the American women at the World Cup.
Nice. He was thinking, how am I going to bring this back? Because of your tangent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But and of course, the American, then, like, Megan Rapinoe missed a penalty, and like Donald Trump's having a go. Their defeat is like a defeat for wokeness. That they've gone out. So like, this just all.
Who are we up for, Dan? Who are the neutrals in Ireland up for now?
Well,
England?
I don't know. I'd imagine this. We have this. We should be mature as a
weren't
nation.
They watching Man United?
We should be mature as a nation. Blah blah. But they're not up for England.
Yeah, okay.
They're not up for England. Japan are sort of. Japan are up there. That's a story you could probably get behind. It's like Jamaica and Colombia. You have the sort of the Colombian assassins, or are they? Who England played the winner of that game. So
assassins.
Did you not follow the whole
beforehand? Remember Denise O'Sullivan?
Friendly that was called.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
We might have a grudging respect for them, like Netflix documentary style. Over time, we might have.
You realise though they weren't that bad at all.
No, it wasn't so bad. But 4 penalties missed in a row in this shootout too, which is quite phenomenal. Before the winning kick, which was quite ambiguous. America, of course, won the last 2 World Cups. So this is kind of
just hasn't gotten going.
Well, it's kind of the equivalent of like France the 2002 World Cup. I know they've gone a round further, America, but they were very unconvincing. They nearly went out in the group stage.
Yeah, you were thinking, okay, they're going to get going. They haven't. Arsenal are also here.
No, this is we're going into Amber and we're going to.
Sorry, we're going into Irish rugby and Arsenal. So let's talk, Dan. Let's talk rugby.
Well, let's talk rugby.
Dan loves rugby.
Well, the one thing I do have an aversion to is placing too much importance in like warm up games, and like I've mentioned Arsenal in here too, because like what does the Community Shield win mean? It basically means nothing. Now, unfortunately, sports shows have to talk about them and find the meaning from them, and there will be new signings or new players or whatever it might be. But I mean, Arsenal won the Community Shield in 2020. Arteta was nearly gone 2 months later, around the time they were playing on the dock. I remember at the time was like the feel-good factor around Arsenal continues as they win the Community Shield. Counted for nothing.
Yeah.
Leicester won it a year later. I mean, I have to mention this beforehand because anyone remembers, and in fairness, the other staff in the show remembered who won the Community Shield. I couldn't. I looked up and I was like, this has no bearing on anything. So yeah, I mean, Arsenal, it shows that they're in good health, but I don't think Man City are suddenly trembling because this new force, hit back against them in the Community Shield with a load of extra time in it. And the Irish rugby game again. Yeah. Look, I mean, it's just, to me, I know people. This is like the test matches and friendlies, but like it's a war. The Rugby World Cup friendlies are very much warm-up matches, more so than any other. It seems to be avoiding injury as much as anything, and can you glean too much from them? So I wouldn't be putting anyone in green on the basis of their performance.
It's green for the result alone, like 33-17 against the side we only played a few months ago, so it wasn't that inspiring to play Italy again. Like, it's the first match Ireland played since the 18th of March, but it's all crucial, it's all necessary to get some sort of...
You have to play again.
Rhythm going, but we were saying before, and look, they're only playing 3 warm-up games officially now. They're against Portugal this week in warm weather training, but that'll be behind closed doors, extremely unofficial, Colombia style. But yeah, there's only 3 warm-ups, which is the first time since 2007. Every subsequent World Cup since then, it's been 4 games. But Andy Farrell had that put to him, and he said, look, we don't need the games, like, this is all about training, and this squad know each other so well now. So like, look, one could probably hazard a guess at the 23 that will be in the first game, like from the starters and the bench, but it's probably more the peripheral figures. And then also at the weekend, it just showcased how Caden Doris can really play across the back row. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal at 7, scoring 2 tries. It was just
he did a burst in the second half. The pace of this lad. I was like, but you have the Jack Conan thing, you have the Italian guy. I was like, how can you play these warm-ups in rugby without having this massive risk of injury? Yeah, so it's a really tough one for Farrell, because it's like Doris played, like, how much did he play the game? Like, he was, and you're like, why are we even risking these lads?
You see, if you go out there with that mentality, you will get injured.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And you have to play the warm-up games. It's like any sport preparing for any major competition.
It's funny, yesterday, like, Sam Ewing, just back from injury, breaks his leg basically at Cork, and I say it to Danny Gilligan, who's like basically in the same stable. I was like, you're the same age more or less as him, as a little bit younger, and it must be in your head like that this can happen. He goes, oh, it's not my head, like, you can't think like that, you never think like that. But
I saw the interview with Wesley Joyce, the jockey, over the weekend.
Yeah, like,
that's a complete tangent, but like, jockey was in a very serious injury at the Galway races last year, and sort of a powerful interview that effectively, like, he's sort of lost the full use of his voice.
So he speaks like he's kind of whispering, and it's amazing that he can even do that.
But he's back, and he's back at it. So like, you can't.
From Moy Ross, like, his story's a movie, like, and the story isn't written yet. But just going back to Arsenal, Declan Rice. So how was he?
He was good. He was good from what I saw.
I know there was reaction to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
he was
Roy
good.
Keane's on about him not being worth it, but I mean the problem with that is that no one is worth the money.
Yeah,
that
and
they're,
money's
that the
almost
fees,
irrelevant.
like the fees
I don't
have
mind
gone
the fees.
so crazy.
The fees is £105 million.
Who cares?
If he stays at Arsenal for a decade, then
who
it's value
cares?
for money, because then
Yeah,
season by
no,
season you're breaking it down. It's so uninteresting, the fee discussion, isn't it? Because I think we're way beyond that now.
It's just that they don't. We're still. I think that people debate transfer fees. They recall what transfer fees were when like Andy Cole went for $7 million.
Roy Keane went for like 3.6
I picked
or
on
whatever.
like Sky Sports News the other day, and in the space of like a minute, there was the news and brief transfers, and it was like a 22 million, a 32 million, and a 26 million. Like like 105 million is 20 million in sort of how we in an inflationary sort of way.
When Roy Keane moved to United for 3.75 million, people are talking about bonkers money. Shearer to Newcastle 15 million was a world record. Crazy money. Like, what's gone wrong with the game? It doesn't matter. The figures change, but the sentiment stays the same. Like, people will always be outraged by big fees.
I actually kind of have sympathy for Roy Keane now at the moment, because it's like, are you Roy Keane, or are you what people expect of Roy Keane? Because he says something about Declan Rice, and I was like, all my feed of media stuff for the weekend was like, Roy Keane says something about Declan Rice. I'm like, how is this even a story? Like, it was everywhere.
Well, it's his pull, because
so it's his pull.
because
so he must be like,
he is the biggest
that
pull.
pull factors into his contract negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be an announcement today. He's on United social media accounts that there's this little teaser of him where he appears from the shadows, and it says the 8th of August 2023. So that's today. Something's coming.
He's not announcing another game of Dublin, is he? Maybe he might play in this one.
So they've made amends, but he's a complete commercial outlet. Look. Also, Dan Fergus Keogh in the comments there has a bone to pick with you about your amber choices. Arsenal won their game. Why orange? And Ireland B won their game comfortably. Why orange? Utter nonsense. Now, you had a point to prove about, because we were saying maybe Arsenal and green, but you were like, no.
Well, like, I mean, let's take this to the performance rankings are based on a traffic light, right? And it's in the context of where they're going, in the context of their goal this season. Are you saying that they've sped on through now? Like, they're on you go, you are ready, like you are off to go.
Well, when
amber, you're still waiting.
When it's too late to break and the lights are at amber, you go through. And that's Arsenal. They won the Community Shield.
Well,
they beat the treble winners.
You need a light green or something here, you know.
But if
or
it's
whatever.
Too late to break, it's actually dangerous.
Yeah,
to stop.
we're not advocating people do that.
Ridiculous.
But all I'm saying is, Fergus, no, I don't think green for me are like competitive wins. Not.
I know, but it's not their fault that it's not a competitive game.
Yeah, but
they won the game.
I know, but like, do you
know what I mean?
Performance. Hang on, if they hit green this week, then where do they go if they win their like 5 league games?
The performance rankings is the day itself. Like, it's not an overall.
Better
team.
Greens. We've got greens.
They're good greens.
If you're waking up groggy at 3 minutes to 8 after bank holiday weekend, and you're listening to two lads on about like whether it should be green or amber,
that's the whole slot.
Like, what?
Johnny,
Unbelievable. Go ahead.
So the one thing as well, the injury time at the end of halves.
We will discuss that later on.
Yeah, but let's mention it just very briefly. Arsenal equalised in the 11th minute of 13 added on. If they continue that, like you said beforehand, players going to go mad. We'll talk about it with Mitten.
Yeah, well, although I mean, it shows that maybe over the years football matches have only ever really been 70 minutes long.
I know that, but then like bring it down to 80 minutes. Don't be. It's too long. Like,
psychologically, it's crazy.
Another Simpsons reference, really, really touching one, when the Mensa people sort of took over Springfield and they got rid of the green light, so it went from red to amber. So like traffic, all traffic went faster. And Lenny's he goes, and it goes amber. He goes, and he goes through and he goes, oh, thank God I made that light. And then he goes, if only I had somewhere to go. It's one of these touching moments. Speaking of touching moments, we've 2 more to go, Dan.
Yeah, we do. We have the green. Well, again, like, you know, meaningful wins. So Cork, well, I mean, as Colin mentioned, like, it was a little bit of a massacre on Sunday.
Rebelettes.
It was one of those games where you flick over a little bit late, you know, and they're like sort of 20-25 minutes. And even then it's like, okay, this looks ominous. But
Waterford missed goal chances to stay in touch in the first half. That was the killer.
Yeah, but like, you have Amy O'Connor talking about scoring a hat-trick and not realising she's done it.
Yeah.
What an absolute champ. Like, that is humility. How is she from Cork? Like, honestly, seriously, like,
it's genuine. But look,
is she from Cork?
The game could have been different, right? Because it was 1-9 to 3 points at half time, but Waterford had a penalty last puck of the first half,
and another goal chance as well.
Yeah, wide top left, and she doesn't miss these things, so that was the turning point. But yeah, a hat-trick in 2 minutes, like. Unbelievable.
It's just you don't want
memories of Robbie Fowler 4 minutes 35 against Arsenal back in the day.
He definitely, I don't think he was in the zone where he didn't know he'd done it. You know what I mean? And it's just it's sort of when it's the last couple of minutes and it's sort of meandering away and it's sort of like junk time and it's sort of a basketball game where it's just game over, and that's not what you want. But I know we've got Sarah Donovan coming up anyway to sort of pick over the sort of details of the game. But to me, I know it's a Cork win, but I think it's the individual brilliance of a sort of a multi-talented sort of sports person as well, as we spoke about last week.
We're going to hear from Amy as well around the time we hear from Sarah Dunn. Very, very brief though. I'm watching the Sunday game highlights last night. Camogie could be really marketable. I'm telling you, because it's gotten a lot more physical as well, and it's fast. It's clearly improving skillfully wise. And if you brought fair enough, hurling camogie, whatever, but if you brought a tourist to a good camogie game in Croke Park with the atmosphere on Sunday, that's a lot closer. People would be like, this is something. It's I don't know. I was actually texting Noel Connors last night because he was on the show last week, and I was like, this is because. It's funny, from East Galway, from where I'm from, it's all ladies football. Camogie doesn't really feature, but you're watching every now and then. You're like, Jesus, if you could sell this game a bit more. I don't know. It's the same as hurling, I suppose. Dan,
sorry, it's just so condensed as well. It's
but I don't think
when we've been talking about camogie in the performance rankings this year, it's been about protests, and it's not really been about the game itself.
Off the top of my head, at home, we don't have a camogie team. We've a very good hurling team. We've a very good ladies football team. We don't have a camogie team. Off the top of my head,
women's Gaelic football is ahead of camogie in terms of marketing for sure. And you're right. There's a serious game there that's been left behind, but it seems like there's only so much room for certain people, or for some people, to actually get on board with this. There was over 30,000 at Croke Park watching this game.
Cork victory is not good in some respects.
No, the margin of victory when people look, the worry is people looking at it and be like, sure, look. But Waterford appearing in their first final since 1945, never won it before. And then you watch the majesty of that hat-trick, and even the penalty miss in the last puck of the first half, there was drama in the game, but if you're looking at the result, you're thinking, sure, Jesus, what's the point of that? But the game itself, like you said, was actually entertaining in spells.
Alan Quinlan is waiting patiently, so we have finally, Dan, our new favourite Irish team, basically.
Well, there's always these phases of a team being in vogue, like we had Preston and Stoke and Burnley have a good contingent, but I think Southampton is going to be one this year. So they were playing Friday night against Sheffield Wednesday, and Gavin Bazunu, Will Smallbone and Ryan Manning all started. So Bazunu, not a great surprise to me, he's retained his place, or he's regained his place under a new manager, Russell Martin. Smallbone, there was talk of him going out again, maybe leaving Southampton, but he was in there, played the full 90 minutes, and Ryan Manning, who's basically he's moved from Swansea, he's with Russell Martin again. Now listen, again, Sheffield Wednesday have come up, and Southampton are coming down, and there's still Premier League quality there, Ward Prowse. Will he go? Will he stay? We'll see. But the last couple of minutes they were very comfortable. Smallbone was involved, keeping the ball, just really, really involved, sort of metronomic in how sort of his presence in the match. Manning looks like he's going to play all the time, and Bazunu might be a good thing for him just to have the experience of winning games sort of week on week. And I think financially they may still have to lose a couple of players, and I'm not sure if they're going to be up there all season, but I think there's a very strong chance they will be. I think for 3 players who, Manning, him and Stephen Kenny, it just hasn't been an easy union, but you'd imagine there's a fair old chance of him being involved in the autumn. I think for Bazunu and Smallbone, it's just great to see them involved in a team that will be.
They pass the ball a lot.
They the last couple of minutes it was keep ball stuff, and Smallbone was just everywhere, just taking very simple sort of 5-yard passes.
And I think they're playing 4 at the back of this, because Russell Martin was a real 3 at the back last.
I think they probably have the versatility. Manning is quite versatile as well, but
it's funny though, Dan, watching him when he was a number 10 at Galway United, the idea of him playing left back, left centre back, really? Bonkers. He was a complete number 10. But in fairness to him, where is the left back debate in Ireland now? Because obviously McLean is kind of edging away from it.
Well, he's gone to Wrexham, and you'd imagine probably being in League 2. I mean, McLean's got to 100 caps now, which was a big landmark, so we'll see where he stands. Enda Stevens is back to Stoke now and is back playing as well, so you sort of can't forget him. He was involved at the weekend. Then Callum O'Dowda got the shirt and was terrible in Greece, really terrible, and so it probably is up for grabs for someone to take ownership of the situation, and maybe Manning at Southampton could be the thing that properly sort of propels him forward. But I think it's wide open. We should mention Adam Ida as well scored the winning goal for Norwich.
And what the delight on the Cork man's face.
Yeah, like he needed, like he didn't start, but then he got a goal and he needed that. And Shane Duffy back playing as well. One of the better
absolutely half stories. Aaron Connolly.
Yes.
What did you make of that? Because he sort of said, "I love the kid" afterwards.
I think he does though.
Yeah.
Aaron Connolly, divisive figure, but I think Duffy and Connolly, I've seen a bit of social media stuff before to suggest that they, there was a sort of a big brother thing at Brighton going on. But like the weekend it was, I suppose, with the EFL being back, there was at least some positive Irish involvement.
What is the general sort of expectation in the championship this season then? Started obviously a week earlier. Who you fancying? You know, people like doing those. There's actually great like little wager to the start of the season where you back like a winner or a team get promoted.
Well, you look last year, like the teams who went down last year, I mean the parachute payments have still created a situation where you should be strong. I mean Leeds were unconvincing yesterday. You got Leicester. You'd imagine Leicester would be very strong if they keep hold of their stronger players. Like Dewsbury Hall was excellent the weekend, but there's new management at these clubs as well, so it's sort of harder to glean who's actually going to be the rising force outside it. Like
Watford,
Norwich would be sort of half interesting with David Wagner there now, because I suppose, I don't know, you still feel when it comes to the crunch though, Leicester and Leeds and Southampton won't be a million miles away. There's nothing revolutionary about stating that. I think that's going to be the case, but it was a great division last year. The championship from top to bottom was very, very congested and very tight, and I think it'll probably be more of the same.
What do you prefer watching, the championship or the Premier League?
I mean, I prefer watching the Premier League, but if there's two games on side to side and it's like Southampton and Stoke on one side and a Premier League game with no Irish players involved on the other side, I'll watch Southampton and Stoke. That's just my personal interest.
Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. It is coming to an Apple Green near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn Coffee experience. After the break, Alan Quinlan is live in studio.
Yeah, and how did you feel that Jack Crowley done at 10 tonight?
He did well. I mean, I thought he certainly in the first half he controlled the game very well. I didn't think he overplayed too much. He looked composed enough. There's a few things that we'll chat about during the week that'll help his performance, but he'll be glad to get that one done. Another experience where he's started at 10, and this time he's been able to run the week, etc. So he'll gain massive confidence from that.
And Kieran Crawley come on then in the second half. He's obviously someone that's in your thoughts.
Well, obviously, else he wouldn't be here, I mean, we'll have a look at the performances of the two of them playing together. We try and get two ball players playing together. Whether that came into fruition or not, I'm not too sure at this moment in time. I think we started the second half pretty poorly, really, and didn't really get going for a while there. So we'll have to look at that as well.
OTB AM.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Manage the computer club in the next couple of years, no problem. I'm trying to say to you, sorry, I made a joke, but I'm trying to say it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just didn't feel like it was said in the right way.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Yeah, Alan Quinlan in the house with Dan McDonald. Not sure you've ever worked together before. Look at the smile on their face.
I think we've been on.
We have, yeah.
You think you have? You're not sure though.
We've passed anyway. We've certainly passed each other in her from. He's probably hopping up out of
going in and then going out.
Yeah.
I do listen to him a lot though.
What do you make of him?
He's alright.
Yeah, he doesn't like rugby.
Alright.
He's always giving out about rugby.
I don't have the rugby stock. I can't.
How would you sell rugby to him as a sport, Quinny?
I don't know. I have friends, big GA fans down Tipperary that they're gone from the rugby since I retired. They would have kind of let on that they were into the rugby when I was playing and go to an odd match, and then afterwards is kind of they've lost all interest, and they're giving out too much rugby in the back pages. That's what Joe Hayes always says to me, the former Tipperary hurler. Joe's a great character,
legend,
and he's he's always given out about too much rugby on the back pages. Where's the GA? But yeah, Dan is all right, but sure, look, you can convert people. We'll have it in a few weeks, Johnny. We'll have if Ireland stumble or fail to get past the quarterfinals in the World Cup, the anti-rugby brigade will be out.
Yeah, well, okay, so what do you make of the game Saturday then? Because, like, I suppose one thing about rugby over the years has gotten so much more physical, and these warm-up games are really a poison chalice. Like, so you look at the physical, like, you want to give fringe players a go. Once you have Crowley gets on it out half. Crowley's grand maybe, but like some of the players that are more up front in terms of the forwards and that, it's dangerous. What do we learn?
The reality here is, I think, and Paul O'Connell said it last week in the press conference, everybody's going to play here. Are they showing their hand too much? No, they're not. I think it was bland at times on Saturday. Very effective. I think when you're leading 21-3 at half time, Italy's probably close to their strongest team. Whereas Ireland's was more or less a completely second string team, bar one or two players, obviously Doris in the forwards and Henshaw maybe in the back line. Otherwise it's a second string team, guys trying to impress. I think the most important part of this run in for Andy Farrell and the players is trying to get minutes under the belt and also avoid injuries. We've seen historically from World Cups that there's always there has been always one or two players who haven't made the cut. You just look at Italy at the weekend. They have two of their best players, Riccioni at tight head. I'm not sure what the update is with him, but Menoncello in the centre was a wonderful player. It looked like his shoulder popped out. Fairly innocuously, his hand was kind of out like
I was watching
like
the
that.
and like, how does this even happen?
Would you believe I saw it many years ago with Mike Prendergast, who's the Munster assistant Munster coach now. We played a pre-season friendly back in the earlier days of 2001, 2 or 3, somewhere around then. I was playing wing forward at the back of a scrum. He kind of went in that position with his hand out like that and kind of barely touched the opposition player, and his shoulder just popped out. So it reminded me of that. So it's very unfortunate. Felix Jones had a bad injury, David Wallace, Tommy O'Donnell, Jordan Murphy, I think, in previous campaigns. So
playing Doris to that extent, and he's obviously amazing, but it's risky.
Yeah, but you need to get minutes under their belt. So will he be? What his involvements will be in the next few weeks, I don't know. But
very
what a player! He's a phenomenal player.
The pace of him.
So many people online, I see wrap him in cotton wool. Is
he? Where is he in our most important players?
He's so effective in everything he does with the ball and without the ball that he has an ability to come up. And to be fair, it's a hallmark of a lot of players in this Irish squad in the last year and a half, 2 years. I keep going back to New Zealand last year because it just keeps coming to my memory the whole time how impressive that second and third test was in New Zealand. Caelan Doris had a quiet first game in Auckland. They were beaten pretty convincingly in the first game. There was a lot in that game that was fixable, that New Zealand got a bit of fortune with some of the tries they scored. And I remember going out of Eden Park that night thinking Caelan Doris was a little bit quiet here. I was a bit disappointed because I'm a massive fan of his. Jesus, he responded in the second and third tests with, and I think Andy Farrell said that the other day. He's the kind of fellow who, if he makes a mistake, he just kind of doesn't let it dwell. He doesn't drop the head.
Yeah.
He nearly intensifies his next action, if you like. So I think if you're looking to a player who's matured and developed so well as a real leader in that team, and how important he is, as you're saying, you know yourself in sport, Johnny, if you make a mistake, that next 5-10 minutes can be really crucial. Some players take longer to kind of get themselves back in a game. I probably experienced that, where I kept running around thinking, God, I've just knocked on the ball or I've just missed a tackle. He gives you the impression that it's done, I'm going to make a big impact in my next action, and he's a wonderful player.
On that note, what's Stockdale thinking after the missed tackle? It looks bad.
Yeah, and again, it's I felt really sorry for him.
He played really well.
I think Andy Farrell and everybody wants him to show us what he can do, like he did before in 2018. The energy, the excitement, the enthusiasm to go forward and score tries. I know you can't hang on to the past. Sometimes we do it, and that sometimes happens in sport as well. It's like a striker who scored 30 goals one season, and then he's struggling for a couple of seasons, and he starts moving around clubs, and people believe they can get that back. Jacob Stockdale is still a relatively young, he's still 25, 26 maybe, is he? I'm not sure exactly now, correct me on that one, but he's still a young player. He's still a very, very talented player.
27 now, actually.
27. But it's still relatively young, yeah. And he's, well, it'd be easier to be younger than Keith. He's been around a long time. But you think that's kind of age, though, that you're really kind of mature and you've become... you've a lot of experience as well. So
talk to me about that, though, because if he pushes your man inside, basically, like, he's kind of half done his job here. So he's really made a Hames at the tackle, and he's physically actually superior to him as well.
One of Jacob's kind of
MOs, or whatever you want to say,
I wouldn't say problems or issues, is that little bit of nastiness that you need, that little bit of... Now, James Lowe's missed tackles. You go back 2 years ago over in Cardiff, where he kind of came in off, made some bad reads. But you just think James Lowe's on that left wing. That fended arm that's coming out there, James Lowe, you think is kind of... He's just has that determination that he's nearly breaking your man's arm to stop the fend, when a guy's out trying to hand you off. And we would have trained like that. A lot of it was rugby league, where if you're running at me and I put my hand on your chest... I remember Mike Ford, who came in and trained us with Ireland from rugby league. It was the first time. The action was to hit down on the hand quickly, because if you come with your chest presented, I want to hand the guy off, and it gives you that little bit of momentum to get away. So he obviously went in a little bit high. The handoff, Panny got the handoff on him and scores. And you just think that's one that's just... It was kind of a bit of a... one from the crowd that you go, oh no.
But is it a good thing in the sense that
it's a bad thing for him in the match? No, it's a bad thing for him in the match. He needed to make that tackle. He needed to, he needed to do everything in his power. However you do it, sometimes, and I say it to players if I'm coaching a young kid, sometimes tackle technique, everything goes out the window. You just jump on a player, you do something, you just make sure you make it, you wrap him some way. But let's not... let's not hang him out to dry here, Jacob Stockdale. Keith Earls missed a tackle as well, and Manincello. So for the, any Ulster listeners, Keith Earls missed a tackle too. There were two bad missed tackles. There were two tackles that kind of took a little bit of air out of the performance, the kind of result. I never thought, Johnny, that we would see a performance here of free-flowing rugby. It's about getting minutes under the belt, being pretty effective, pretty basic in the game plan. Ireland are not going to show their hand in the neck, even against England and Samoa. They won't be showing their hand, or Romania, probably not against Tonga. I think there'll be stuff held back here for Scotland and South Africa, the big games.
Well, the biggest thing for me was the out-half situation. I thought Crowley looked very much at home.
He looked assured. He had a few mistakes in him, and Jacob Stockdale had a couple of mistakes that we mentioned, but there was some very positive moments from Jacob Stockdale as well. I think there's a lot more in him in Stockdale, and I hope that he looks back at his game and he gets a chance to do some stuff over in Portugal or in a training camp this week.
Who's number 2 at out-half now?
It's kind of unfair to kind of go suddenly Jack Crowley is gone ahead of Ross Byrne. I think that's the perception there now a little bit.
It didn't harm his prospects.
Ross Byrne needs to play the next game and start against England, which he probably will, and he needs to kind of invigorate himself a small little bit. Given the ends to the season that both out-halves had, Crowley finished on a very big high, obviously, in Munster's run to winning the URC, and there was a lot of big moments, but I think up to the semi-final, Jack Crowley was a little bit... The two performances over in South Africa in this round 17 and round 18, he came off in both those games for Ben Healy. So, you just have to be careful in the way we propel these guys. I think Jack Crowley looked very assured. He's still really young. I think he's a confidence player, and I think there's a lot of good moments in the match on Saturday. I think his ceiling, and I've said it before, is higher maybe than Ross Byrne's. Ross Byrne is a very, very good player. So I think it's intriguing the next couple of weeks, and they'll probably go hard at it in training. But of course, Kieran Frawley came in at fly half the other day, and I think that was an exciting prospect as well to see two of them, because Crowley can be a very effective full back, and there's a lot of people talking about, if something happened to Hugo Keenan. Jimmy O'Brien played there at the weekend, and he got a bang in the shoulder, and Jack Crowley goes back and plays there. So
there was that moment as well at the end where they just come to the end of the game, they showed all the subs kind of on the sideline looking on. You're like, Jesus, there's some talented players there.
When you think of what Andy Farrell has done, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe Dan knows this as a rugby nerd. How many players Andy Farrell has capped in the last couple of years? The number is pretty big.
Depth is insane though.
I wonder what the dynamic is like in a group at this stage, because I know there's all different battles going on between to be a starting member, but I see Andy Farrell is naming his final squad later than some of the other coaches. There's 8-9 lads are going to be cut there, and I'm not sure if it's something that you speak about, but it's probably the unspoken thing that everyone's aware of. There's a call coming at some stage, and some of you are gone.
Yeah, and I remember those calls on a couple of occasions, in particularly in 2003, going to Australia. The excitement of waiting for that call when you're kind of one of those players who's in that, maybe from the bracket from 23 out to that 31, 32, you're one of those 7, 8, 9, 10 players. On two occasions I probably was. 2003 I get in there, it's incredible. Probably 2007 was the most competitive for me, and again, waiting on the fringes. So the one thing that would worry me about this World Cup is it's only from what happened in 2007, and maybe we're all tarnished a little by that, the players who were there. Paul was there, of course, he's coaching now. Is if I asked you to pick the Ireland, either of you to pick the Irish team now and maybe the Irish 23, even if you weren't that into rugby, you'd go very, very close. That happened in 2007 when basically 15 players were kept home from the tour to Argentina. They were literally kept home, and they were kind of wrapped in cotton wool a little bit. And obviously those players knew that they were going to start. They knew that they were going to be picked, and
that's a problem.
And then it was a case for. Well, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem. It'll be an excuse if we come unstuck. I think they just have to be mindful of the fact that most of the players know, unless something goes drastically wrong or their form really dips, that they're picked on the team. So to answer your question, I think that's very astute from Andy Farrell. He's actually dragging this out a little bit. This probably something they're mindful of, that most people could pick this Irish starting team now. So because he's waiting till after Samoa, he's probably keeping them all on their best behaviour. In other words, don't drop your standards here, because I haven't my mind fully made up yet, which, you pick the team now. England announced it yesterday, New Zealand did, South Africa are announcing today. It's a couple of weeks out. Fellas could get a little bit, I can ease off a little bit in the fitness now. We can go for a few pints on Tuesday night, or we can sneak out of the hotel, whatever. I'm not saying that it happens, but I think that's probably
it's a good question. Like the out-of situation, like how is Sexton relating to all these other guys who are basically trying to not only get his spot.
I would imagine he's helping him.
Yeah, he probably
is.
He's helping him. Like to help Crowley in a situation like Saturday, when there's a lot of pressure on Crowley, because if he flops here, it really undermines him. And this is the problem. I know you're playing Italy, but Crowley has to at least do a 7 out of 10 here. I got to bring you to this Irish Examiner, Brendan O'Brien. If I don't get selected because I just played 12, that's just what it is. McCloskey, talk to me.
It's a difficult position, because if you I think Stuart McCloskey has done very well. Going back to last November, started against South Africa, picked up an injury, came back for Australia. Who's going to be picked here? Is he going to bring 4 centres? that's going to be the intriguing part here. Steve Borthwick has brought an extra forward. I think he's gone 18 forwards, is he, and 15 backs. I'm not sure. I'll have to get the numbers right again. Have a look at it again. But you've got Bundee Aki, Robbie Henshaw, Stuart McCloskey, Gary Ringrose. They're kind of the four that have been involved in the last number of years. Obviously, McCloskey has come into that mix. Jamie Osborne is the other centre there. So there's 5 centres there. Are they going to bring 3 or 4? I think they're going to bring 3 centres, and those 3 centres are Aki, Henshaw and Gary Ringrose.
It's quite agonising, isn't it?
Because some of the back 3 can probably move into the centre, and it's Keith Earls and Jimmy O'Brien can go in and play outside centre. So Crowley can play at 12 as well. So I think Andy I'd say Mike Catt, obviously this is his call. I think he'll look at that. Whereas if you Bundee Aki, Robbie Henshaw, Stuart McCloskey and Gary Ringrose, there's probably only one out of that 4 that can go into the back 3, and that's Gary Ringrose. So it's a difficult one, and it's going to be a tough decision, but it's going to be hard if Stuart McCloskey doesn't make it, because I think he's shown a lot in the last kind of 12 months and what he's done. But it's pretty competitive there, right across the board, and I think he's someone that unfortunately could miss out on it.
The first game as well since just after St Patrick's Day, and also the first time Ireland are playing only 3 World Cup warm-up games. They have that Portugal camp, so Farrell is basically saying we don't really need that many games, and
that's because you've got Romania.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, you know what I mean. They can move up the gears in that situation. South Africa won the World Cup last time with a lot of games and going pretty earlier than anyone to Japan. Look, it's about, I've said this about pre-seasons, it's if you go well and things go right, it's the best decisions were made. If we're analysing this, and no matter what happens in the World Cup, Johnny, if Ireland get out of the group, you're playing France and New Zealand. You're kind of flicking a coin. Obviously, if Ireland are bringing brilliant form into a quarter-final, if they're there, because Scotland are going to have a big say in this, you're getting more enthusiastic, and you're kind of really breaking it down then and saying, well, they're playing well, or this is their big strength. I think where they'll be in a better position this time is, I think they'll be quite calm about the challenge, in a sense that they'll have confidence and belief in themselves. But again, it's on the day. France are going to have so much momentum with it being over there. New Zealand, what we've seen of them in the last couple of weeks, it's kind of frightening prospect for
Where are they at?
Possible if Ireland are there.
Briefly now, because you're like, people have this, it's in France, so it's kind of between Ireland and France. We have an edge over New Zealand, but clearly it's not that straightforward.
It's not, no. New Zealand, I think they showed a couple of weeks ago for 20 minutes against South Africa in the Rugby Championship first weekend. It was phenomenal for the first 20-25 minutes of that game. So they can do that. They can bring that pace, that intensity, that quality. They had a bad 2022, culminating in that series loss to Ireland. The Rugby Championship did a couple of bad losses, but they're capable, and I think you can see there's a stamp of Joe Schmidt in this team now. They're far, I think, and I said it after the tour in New Zealand, they kind of rely on this brilliant X factor to rip teams apart. It didn't work in the second and third test for Ireland, because Ireland were so stable and connected defensively and stopped them at source, and then they didn't really kind of know what to do. Now they seem to have great timing in their passes. Their breakdown is really effective again. There's Joe Schmidt all over this team, so I think he's obviously had time to bed in there, and you couldn't rule New Zealand out of in any game, but I think even more so now what we've seen in the last couple of weeks from them.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers, lads.
Off the Ball is coming to the Cork Podcast Festival. Join us on 27th of August. The Cork Opera House special guest Jimmy Barry Murphy More guests to be announced very soon. Don't miss out on what's going to be a brilliant night in the heart of the Rebel County. For tickets, go to www.corkpodcastfestival.ie/off-the-ball/. Speaking to Cork, this always reminds me of the story of your man ringing the fella from the county board as the internet was just getting going, and he's like, you'll find it there on the website, and the fella from the county board goes, what's the address? And your man goes, www, and he goes, hang on, how many W's? Speaking of Cork, we have Sarah Donovan standing by, but first here's a snippet of hat-trick hero Amy O'Connor after the victory over the Dacia.
And you certainly did a bit of firepower 3 minutes into the second half. I hope you have the lotto numbers picked as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't realise I scored a hat-trick until another interview afterwards. Someone said it to me, I thought it was only 2. But I suppose, I was just so focused on the next ball that it wasn't something I thought about too much.
Yeah, I think it was 3 goals in 3 minutes. It's not bad going on up here in Croke Park.
Yeah, probably something you couldn't even dream of, so thrilled with that.
Yeah, honest question, Sarah. Dan and I want the answer to this. Is she actually from Cork? I mean, clearly, there's something. She must have a mother from like Mayo or something.
What, the serial winners from Mayo?
She just doesn't know. Sure, 3 goals, 2 goals, whatever. I don't know what happened there.
Well, St. Vincent's will claim her. I think they had a.
Yeah, we might have some dodgy Wi-Fi.
Is that Cork Wi-Fi you're going to blame?
Cork Wi-Fi.
Why would you say, is she from Cork?
Huh?
Why would you say she's not from Cork?
Because she's too modest, like.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? The Cork people, they don't lack confidence.
I thought you were on about.
Call them there, like I'm only here.
No, I know. Well, how do you know someone's from Cork? Like they tell you that type of thing.
Exactly. Cork.
There's an element of that, but
someone's from Cork, they tell you.
But like there is an element of that, but like I mean,
nobody know you're from Louth.
Oh, like seems to be your recurring point. Yeah,
this is it.
It seems to be your recurring point.
But we're trying to get Sarah back. They have a lot of issues in Cork at the moment involving Wi-Fi, obviously.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like I mean, are you suggesting that all Cork people are just in your face then about their talent? I don't really get your point here. You've met it a couple of times.
I think it's extraordinary that somebody might get a hat-trick and just kind of went over her head, like. But that's
her job.
Yeah,
like, Roy Keane advocates that. What are you there to do?
Keane.
I'm there to score goals.
Job.
Yeah, that's what she's doing. It's not
Sarah,
really your job.
Dan is channeling his inner Roy Keane here.
Well, look, actually, I read Emer Ryan's book at the weekend, The Grass Ceiling. And I think it might explain a lot about the Cork people. She's from the Midlands, obviously. She's from Moneygall. And she described the Cork dressing room as far more flamboyant than the Moneygall dressing room. These are the bars girls in the city. So she used the word flamboyant. So I'm going to go with that. That's very complimentary, we'll say.
Dan, can you? What did you make of the Camogie spectacle? Big crowd. Obviously, I guess they're trying to get on to the ladies' level, but this is potential, I think.
Well, no, like we spoke to Sarah about it on Thursday, I think it was. I mean, the crowd is upwards of 30,000 for the first time since 2007. I was just thinking about that as well. Like, I suppose you look at it is compared with the football final, but I think as Sarah mentioned it, you've often had Dublin or Meath involved. Generally, there's more travelling involved. I know the weekend event, there's other finals on as well too, so it's not just about 2 teams. But it always strikes me as odd that there's that discrepancy between the crowd figures, but I suppose geography can explain a bit, and maybe there's more politics around promotion and stuff that Sarah's way better placed to talk about than either of us. But it seems to be a step in the right direction, at least.
Yeah, I thought she'd be delighted with the crowd, Sarah, considering again Camogie's really at its infancy here in terms of where it could be, I think.
It's niche.
Yeah,
it's niche. I suppose it's played in less places well than hurling is, and we talk about the hurling struggles all of the time. So you only have 3 teams who've consistently competed in the competition since, say, 2012. It was Waterford's first time appearing in the final since 1945. Other teams had failed, like Wexford were the last team to get there in 2012, and since then it's been Cork, Kilkenny, Galway, Cork, Kilkenny, Galway, and the second teams of Cork, Kilkenny, Galway kept appearing in the intermediate final, which meant the numbers were halved again. You know, this weekend we had 6 different counties involved, so you'd 6 different chances to get as many people there as you could. So I thought they did really, really well to get over 30,000 people there this weekend, and hats off to them for that.
Commenting from Colin McCarthy, Camogie should be on the day before the hurling. A ticket to the hurling final should get you into the Camogie, and they can get better attendances up, make a weekend of it. What do you make of that?
Dan, I was saying to you last week, the League of Ireland doesn't get the same questions about why their showpiece competition is only at 30,000. What's the fixation on it? Like, if the League of Ireland's FAI competition, which is, you know, the best competition in the country, is only hitting 30,000, is this an issue that we're making more of an issue of?
Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No. Listen, my point is, and I said it Sarah last week, it's more to me, I think there's too much of a focus on the one day. There's that's a big part of the Irish sport mentality, is to have the one day attendance. And like, personally, for me, even like, you know, the ladies football final, say we'll get a big figure, and as always, well, this is the biggest event in Europe that day. I'm looking at that going, okay, that's great, but you've done a big promotion for today, you know, and like, you know, running buses, and that's brilliant. But to me, surely it's about more consistency and stuff like that. Like League of Ireland wise, for example, the best thing this year is the attendances are up week on week all of the time. Yeah. And like the cup final, sometimes we think they should fill it by doing more promotion around that event. But I don't know how I feel sometimes about tagging something onto a weekend. I think you need to make it the main event of the weekend rather than making it the undercard to something else. Yeah, absolutely. That would be my opinion. There could be different opinions on that. Well,
Sarah, when I'm watching, so I watched the highlights last night of the Camogie, and it's the same thing in hurling except it's amplified. How do you get this sport out to all corners of Ireland? Because Camogie could be exceptional across all corners of Ireland. And then I'm thinking, like, what has this done for Waterford Camogie, in the sense that it's an absolute obliteration? The first half kind of went against them. Does it, you know, it wasn't the showcase that you wanted in terms of that competitiveness?
The Camogie Association are at fault here, right? And I'd be very critical of that. They didn't seed the competition. It was last year 2 groups of 6, with, you know, the top 4 coming out, and it was seeded. This year it was 3 groups of 4. Waterford were in the 3rd group, we'll say. They trounced Offaly, Limerick and Antrim. And they came into a semi-final and beat a very fancy Tip team in horrible conditions in Nolan Park. And I will say, to Dan's point, there was 7,500 people in Nolan Park for both semi-finals, which adds to your point. You know, it's not just the showpiece that was getting the big numbers, but they beat Tip by a point. Tip were devastated because they genuinely thought they were in the final, I think. And then they go into the final, and Grace Walsh made a great point on the show on Sunday night. There was no experience. None of the players in that Waterford team had any of experience of playing in a senior All-Ireland final in Croke Park. Of the Cork team, 12 players had All-Ireland medals already. The Camogie Association, if they had seeded the competition, wouldn't have had that pairing, but then they wouldn't have had 30,000 people in Croke Park. So were they looking for the numbers, or were they looking for the quality? And the blame lies with them.
On Cork themselves, obviously, it was a hell of a performance. Not to mention Amy. All of the Cork team can say more or less, like, they were dominant from start to finish. Just looking at, so you've Liam Cronin and Michelle O'Connor coming in, maybe credited with change of form. Where did this happen from their league sort of performances, and how did they actually peak at the right time, I suppose? So
they've lost to Galway pretty much consistently over the last number of years. Galway were identified as their bogey team, and in the league final this year they had a chance, I suppose, to put that to bed, right? But they didn't go well in Croke Park. If you were to watch the game in Croke Park on Sunday and the game in Croke Park on Easter weekend, 2 completely different games, and a completely different style of play from Cork. They were overcarrying the ball, they were holding up the ball in the delivery zones, their inside line was absolutely starved of ball in that league final. Galway incredibly well set up defensively, and every time the ball went in and it was taking too long to go in, the backs were coming out with the ball. Fast forward to this weekend, and Cork's distribution was outstanding, but not just from Hannah Looney, who had 18 possessions. It was Maeve Callan, it was Izzy O'Regan, it was Laura Tracy. It was a complete performance from Cork. The amount of ball that Katrina Mackey and Amy O'Connor got. Amy O'Connor had 10 possessions and she scored 3-7. Mackey had 11 possessions, hit 2 points, but she assisted in the 2 goals. Massively unselfish play from Mackey, but 4-10 from the inside full forward line with Circa McCartan tugging in with 1-1.
Talk to me about Circle McCartan as well, just about this remarkable down kind of background as well, which is probably bridging a 44-year gap here.
Yeah, with her dad, obviously famous Down footballer, she was coming to Cork for placement, and Eagle Eyes in Cork recognised the name and parachuted her into the bars in Cork, and they didn't waste time, parachuted her into the Cork setup. And I suppose I've played down over the years with Dublin and with Cork, actually, in All-Ireland finals, and there's a pocket in Ulster that really loves its camogie. So you've got Niamh Mallon as well from Down, would be very similar to Beth Carton in the amount of work she gets through in games. So real quality in that Down setup. So for one of Down's players to come to Cork, Cork were quickly on getting her involved in the squad, and you could see when she celebrated her goal on Sunday what it meant to her, and I suppose how she's been enveloped by the Cork setup and how she's been welcomed.
Where do Waterford go from here? And like, for Sean Power, like, what do you say in the dressing room after that? Because it's so deflating.
It's a 19-point loss, lads. It's, I suppose, from last week, I don't know, did you sense my nervousness last week? Or Dan, you might have. I said 6, but I was afraid that it was going to be more. I said that Cork would win by at least 6, and winning by 19 was on the cards last week, because I suppose defensively they didn't have the same quality in their defensive 6. Individually, very good camogie players, but they didn't have the experience of Kilkenny. They didn't have the experience of Galway. That's been built up over the course of 10 years, so you can't just put that into a team in the space of 3 months. And they lost Vicky Faulkner after 2.5 minutes, and I was saying, Iona Heffernan, who was on the bench, I don't even think she'd gotten around to the idea that she was going to be in after 2.5 minutes. So all of a sudden she's parachuted in to mark one of the Cork forwards. Amy O'Connor sees a chink of breathing space because Vicky Faulkner's gone, and she's the ball over the bar in the next exchange. Everything went wrong for Waterford, but ultimately they wouldn't have been fast enough and they weren't prepared enough. And that goes with the camogie.
I was in Mallow yesterday at the races, so I got the train home, and it was lovely to see all the red and white flags, and I was waiting maybe 45 minutes to train, so I went into the waiting room and did all these photos of past Cork winners of All Irelands, and it was going back to like Mulcahy and Jimmy Barry Murphy, and you had then the camogie players as well, and it was really cool to see. And it wouldn't be the Examiner without Rebel Rain, drought over, are Cork now set to dominate camogie? And this is always a question after obviously demolition like that, but it's not as straightforward as that, Sarah, either. And like people, like Kilkenny and Galway and Tipper watching at home and saying, right, that's not going to happen to us next year.
Yeah, but this Cork team hadn't won since 2018, and I know Hannah Looney described it as a famine in Cork, but that group had done, you're looking at 100 sessions a year, right? For 6 years they'd done 100 sessions. They were up on 600 sessions, and they hadn't won the trophy that they were looking for. It could be, domination for the next 6 years, or those girls who've spent 6 years trying to get back to the Hogan stand could decide, I don't have enough to give.
Yeah,
like there will be an erosion of the panel in some way. The Cork were very lucky to have Katrina Mackey and Pamela Mackey back in the squad, because they've been around the squad far beyond that group that's there now. Their career spans over a decade. So swings and roundabouts, it took them so much to get here and win. It may not be that they'll all stick around in the next couple of years. So I suppose the only other thing that I'll say to that is the bench that Cork were able to bring on. They've 20 or 25 players that are at that level that Waterford aren't at. So Cork certainly have an opportunity here if they stay in and bed in. Maybe they'll get a 3 in a row, but we haven't done it.
Dana's young daughter, and I imagine she's going to have plenty of options as to what sport she wants to play as she gets older. How does the association sell this sport? Because I was just looking at this game on Sunday. It is so marketable in so many ways and really, really unique. But it's so peripheral. It has to start from somewhere, and it's a big philosophical question. It's a big organisational question for the organisation. But this sport has to be sold because it should have so much going for it.
So the Camogie Association and the ladies football are incredibly lucky that for the period of about 5 until 10 or 11, the mini leagues comprises both boys and girls. So once girls are, into a GA club structure, for the first 5 or 6 years, it's run by the GA. and they have full exposure. They have all of the same resources. And then it gets tricky after age 10 when the girls have to branch off, because then you're relying on coaches, you're relying on club resources, and it just depends on how strong the Camogie club or the ladies football club, or whether there's a one club model in the club. That's the point where the Camogie and ladies football have to step in and really look at how they're coaching it. I had a text from an old colleague of mine from Nave Marno's yesterday. There was a blitz run in Dublin, and he said brilliantly well organised, but it was all men, all coaches, all male coaches, all male managers with the groups of girls. And we're incredibly lucky that, you know, dads like Dan are going to pick up work with their daughters and you know, coach them to be athletes and sportswomen. But the Camogie Association really needs to drive this in terms of getting players and former players back to the pitch and, you know, involved in coaching. So it's a very, very hard thing to do, but I think you have to see women on the pitch, on the sidelines, for it really to grow.
Where are you living in Dublin again, Sarah?
I moved to Cork.
Oh, you're back in Cork, yeah.
I'm back in Cork, yeah, but I was managing Marnogues, Nave Marnogues last year in Dublin for a year.
Lovely. I thought you were part of the big move to Dublin there. Well, listen, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, guys.
We have a few live comments just I want to give. Michael, I passed by Lansdowne Sunday. A lot of dads with daughters going to the game, which is great to see. Yeah, it's funny, that kind of gets to even what we're talking about there in the Camogie. Edward Freeman, Liverpool beat Man City in the Charity Shield last year. It didn't work out too bad for City. Fergus Kyo, orange has a negative connotation. It tends to mean baddish. Arsenal and Ireland did grand, but shouldn't be in the rankings at all. The Carpet Man, sending out a Mickey Mouse team at the Aviva is exactly what those fans deserve, who don't have the same passion of LOI teams. It's actually good to bring you in on this, JD, because I know you're not going to relate to that.
We're related to that in what way? Good morning.
Well, if you're JD's in the house, if you're not brought up in a kind of I was brought up following Liverpool, as were 99% of kids in Ireland were brought up following English teams.
Yes.
And then you are indoctrinated, as I was, and most kids became Liverpool or Man United fans as it was. And you can't say, oh, don't be going watching the Mickey Mouse friendly, because if I were a kid, I would have loved to see Liverpool in Dublin.
Well, it's all dead in minutes, isn't it? I was out of work here on Sunday, and I was going to Malahide, and I had to wait for about 4 trains to go past, and all the trains were full. It was like the tube in London of Man United fans going up to the north side of Dublin, and I got on the train.
Are you saying like London's full of Manchester United fans as well?
Yeah, probably is.
That's a dig in its own way.
So it's real, and like the streets are full of Man United fans, so it is real.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's denying it's real. I think to me the talking point of the weekend is not the denying the sport it's there. It's just the misfortune that they didn't get
value for money
experience that they believed they were paying for. Now, I would make the point, I still think if it was advertised as like a Manchester United team is coming out, it's going to be
Manchester selection,
it still would have sold out, in my opinion. But at least, you know, people would have known, and I think maybe the pricing might have been different. As we know, it's different. It's expensive to do a lot of things in Dublin now, and you saw people, like a lot of comments of people who spent like €300 on Sunday, you know, as a family spending a lot of money, and you want to get a sense that you're getting what you thought you were.
Question for you: did the FAI have any influence in that game?
Well,
like, could you not?
The FAI get a flat fee.
Could you not suggest it could be a League of Ireland team against Man United?
I don't think that would have made a difference, really. I mean, I think the broader issue is of the marquee team that you bring. Like, how it works is the FAI will get a flat fee and from promoters, and the promoters will get the talent. You know, the FAI get the fee, the Aviva Stadium, and then you know, you bring in the teams. The same with Celtic and Wolves. The week before was relocated from Korea for some reason. But clearly sometimes with those games there's terms and conditions, and my point would be, like when United were in the States, you know, there would have been certain obligations you would feel at certain places, and Dublin, while it remains a massive hotbed, or Ireland remains a massive hotbed, it's not a place where, you know, it's sort of, they can go, we were in Oslo this weekend last year, they can go somewhere else, and it's not as if there's going to be big demands, you have to play your stars in Dublin. But the organisers could try and put that in. They could try and say, as part of the contract for this game, you have to bring X amount of, you know, first teamers, but clearly that didn't happen in this instance, and I think a week out from the season, it's probably, look, I understand.
Also, they played a game 24 hours
exactly,
earlier as well,
which was which was announced subsequent to the Dublin one. Now again, they played that split weekend last year. They did exactly the same thing. They played Saturday, Sunday. So I suppose the form was there. Like, it was easy to see how this would happen. But clearly, when it comes, I think to me the issue is more with how the game was sold, as opposed to, it's not saying Manchester United did anything wrong. It's not suggesting that.
Briefly, JD, Liam McDwyer. Booing Maguire was pathetic. Granted, it was mostly kids. I just think he is almost a pantomime villain at this stage. He will move on as Ten Hag has made it obvious that he isn't wanted. If you were an adult at Lansdowne Road and you spent some of your weekend booing Maguire, like, I don't know, I just find this absolutely pathetic. What do you make of it?
Well, the world's gone toxic anyway.
Toxic? Like, what are you doing? Like?
Well, you know, people are booing David Goff. Dublin fans are booing David Goff at the All-Ireland final. We just won the All-Ireland final. And booing the referee. So, I don't know, people just need to cut themselves on generally.
He's a human being as well. Like, he's a human being. And, like, what example is this to kids? Like, that's, you're literally saying you can just mock a guy in front of, like, he's a human being. I don't care what money he's on. He's living a life that's not...
But also, he's at work.
He's at work, yeah. I just find this, like... I don't know. It's so sad. It's so sad. What is in the news?
Well, we got the Women's World Cup kicking off. The last 16 final matches, Colombia, Jamaica at 9 o'clock. And then we got France against Morocco at noon. England await the winners of the Colombia-Jamaica game. League of Ireland First Division yesterday. Galway beating Treaty United 3-0. It's interesting that 2nd to 5th will play off. So our own Shane Keegan...
having a great season.
You know, they drew 2-2 at Kerry. Now, Waterford are going to finish 2nd. They beat Wexford 1-0. But they're not guaranteed a place in the Premier Division next season. Harry Kane, the sub-opera continues there. Spurs turning down an 86 million bid from Bayern for Kane.
What do you think will happen?
I really have no idea. I think at this stage he'll probably stay. Like, it's a week out from the season, and he wants to start the season with the club he's going to be at.
Do you want to, like, remember you reached a point last year, you were like, I just let him go.
I reached that point.
Let him fly away.
Yeah.
You're still there.
I would be, yeah. Okay. I think he deserves our blessing and to go, but it feels like it's a gamble for Spurs either way. You keep him, you could get in the Champions League next season. You sell him, you get the 80 million, but you don't have time really to buy players. West Ham understood to have tabled 50 million for Maguire and Scott McTominay from Man United. Romeo Lavia, Liverpool are trying to get him. They've had a third bid turned down from Southampton. Kieran McGee needs to stay at Armagh for a 10th season. And Brian Dewar and Fergal Owen going to stay on in Tyrone for another 3 years, it seems.
Yeah, wow.
Which is a vote of confidence in them. Look, they won the All-Ireland in 2021, but they've had a couple of disappointing seasons, Tyrone. And we have Roscommon racing there at 5:30 this evening.
Thank you, JD.
All right, lads. Look forward to speaking to you on Saturday.
Yeah, it's all back, Dan.
It is.
Yeah, it's back.
Just in a different order. JD can call the shots and he can do the links.
A new order.
Yeah.
You're very comfortable in that chair, I have to say.
It's swinging around here.
Yeah, it's
making it warm for JD. Yeah, there we go. We're back on 5 days time. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's back. Andy Mitten, are you ready for the new season?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Just like, can you make it sound any more exciting than that?
I'm still jet lagged. I know you won't believe me, and I know I was.
We have a lot of first world problems on this show today. People spending too much money, being jet lagged, but you are tired.
Get your small violin out. I'm sure you're sympathetic, but yeah, I woke up at 3:10 this morning and couldn't get back to sleep. I thought that going to Dublin at the weekend and having a few pints of Guinness would sort of reset me, and it sort of did. But yeah, I'm back to square one now. But I am looking forward to it genuinely, and I'll be at Old Trafford on Monday night for Manchester United's first game against Wolves, and I'm pretty optimistic.
So if you have insomnia at 3 a.m, do you what's your tactic here? Do you like force yourself to try to sleep, or do you end up like everyone just going on their phone and making it worse?
It's complicated by 2 young kids who like getting up in the night, and I don't really have a tactic because I don't normally have this. I've not had jet lag for 4 or 5 years, and I'm surprised how much it hit me, but I'm not the only one. Some of the other people who flew back from the States last week are also struggling with it, so I'm just hoping that we'll get normalised. I've got to finish off the first United we stand of the season by today, and I'm on deadline, and well, I've got to do it. I've got no other choice. I can't tell the printer that I'm jet lagged and can't send it to print, can I? So I've got to be done. I'm hoping I'm going to time myself out and then go to bed at one point and just sleep for 8 hours. That's my dream.
How was the Dublin experience then from your perspective, Andy? I know like there's been a debate here. There's clearly a lot of some disappointed Irish fans, who weren't expecting the split friendlies. Although I know Manchester United did the same thing last year, but just maybe the timing of announcements maybe jarred with some people. I mean, how was the occasion for you?
For me personally, I loved it. We did a gig at the Sugar Club on Saturday night, and that went well. I like the city a lot. I like the Guinness. Found a good pub called Hartigan's, I think.
Oh, what an absolute banger.
That's a good find.
Banger. Absolute banger. You'll never want to go anywhere else. And you went to the Sugar Club anyway.
And a group of gentlemen were just sat around a table, just jamming with their instruments. And I just thought, this is magnificent. And I spoke to one of them. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Manchester." And he said, "Give me 5 minutes." And then he started playing Matchstick Men in tribute to L.S. Lowry from Salford, and it was just wonderful. And
there's a real connection though with Northern English lads and Irish people. It just works.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was with some friends as well, and we had a great time. You're pretty famous off the ball, Loads of people come up to me.
Well,
and
yeah,
we see you on off the ball.
You know that.
So yeah, I realise that you don't get that when you're walking around San Diego. But your point about fans being unhappy, I wouldn't just say some. I got it non-stop. So I stood on Lansdowne Road selling United We Stand. Before the game against Lons on Saturday, I got wind of the team and I tweeted it's going to be a very strong team. And that just set people off because people then thought that it wouldn't be a strong team the following day at Dublin. And I quickly gathered that all the substitutes from Old Trafford would be starting in Dublin, but that didn't appease fans. And I understand why. People had paid a lot of money for the tickets at the Aviva. The game had sold out quickly. And after that had happened, United announced another friendly at Old Trafford. So a lot of people were on my case on social media to the point that I was going to tweet out and say, look, I don't pick the team. I'm with you. I hear what you're saying. And then stood on Lansdowne Road, absolutely hammered it down. So if you want another similarity with Northern England, it was raining, then it was sunny. We sold out of United We Stand in no time. Brilliant to meet Manchester United fans in real life.
So you brought over the fanzine and everything?
Yeah, and I was worried. I was worried on two levels. One, people told me that Irish people don't carry cash anymore, and our card readers don't work in the Republic of Ireland. And two, we're allowed to sell anywhere as a printed publication, but in Dublin, I'm told that you need special street traders licenses.
Nah, don't mind that. Be grand.
So I was worried. So we brought copies over, and the police were fine with us. And we sold them in no time. We could have sold 4 times as many as we brought. And I really enjoyed it. So much interaction goes on online. So to stand on the street and have people coming up to you. One man came up to me with a copy of issue 3 from February 1990.
Oh, wow.
How wonderful was that? It was just brilliant. And Dale, a United fan from Clonmel, he came up and helped us sell. So that was good. But, 90% of people were saying how disappointed they were with the expected lineup. And I think they're entitled to have that opinion. But the Aviva is a top stadium. And I was actually going to fly back to Bilbao with the Athletic Bilbao team. That had all been arranged, and it changed at the last minute. So the vast majority of the crowd were Manchester United fans. I saw the headlines about Harry Maguire being booed. I sat in the West Stand and I wasn't in the media. And I actually thought he got more support than just where I was. And the game, it wasn't the best game ever. It had an exciting finish. It's not for me to say whether it was good value or not for the people who were there. But it illustrates just how popular Manchester United are in Dublin and the Republic of Ireland, to sell that big stadium out so quickly. And when I was looking at that stadium, and I have been before, and when I was seeing the stadiums on the US tour and thinking, Old Trafford, I really love it, but there's no leg room in comparison to here. The architecture's not as good as here. So I was absorbing information on all different levels. Ten Hag came, he brought his team. Athletic Club were always going to be technically good as well. look, it wasn't the best game ever, but I still came away from it touched by the enthusiasm and the passion of Manchester United fans I came across.
What age are you, Andy?
Riding feeling.
What age are you now?
49.
49. So Dan and I are, shall we say, the other side of... We're in our 40s now. We're actually all in our 40s. We're 40. The level of Premier League, like, saturation when I was a kid is phenomenal. And this is still a thing where Manchester United can sell out that quickly. And Manchester United was... when I was a kid was... like Eric Cantona was possibly almost like, and Roy Keane, these are the biggest personalities in sport when I was a kid, and it still exists, Dan, and these are, I don't know, it's Man United is still a massive thing.
No, it is. No, and listen, and we spoke about poor Andy. Come on, let's not have the same discussion again. I think like just the disappointment for the fans at the weekend was, even I think the game in Old Trafford on Saturday was priced in a very different way. They made a big deal of it, and as I said, I mentioned I knew people who actually flew over, to that, and it worked out better. But it still doesn't matter. Like I think if there was another game announced in Dublin in the morning, it would still sell out. Even if some people might be a little bit more guarded about maybe wanting to know a little bit more about who might possibly play. But there's no denying that great love, like the great love that exists. I just think, I would have said some of the fans travelling from outside of Dublin would nearly be better putting that money towards a trip to Manchester in future, unless there's guarantees around these games. But look, you can't tell people, maybe loads of people that were there despite that still had a very good time, even if they were very disappointed travelling up. But I suppose the bigger picture, Andy, is a week out from the season, how is the fan base feeling generally about where things are headed?
Okay, I think they're backing the manager. They're satisfied with the signing so far. The attention has switched more to probable outgoings now. Manchester United need money and spent a lot on the three players who've signed so far. Wolves at home, Manchester United really should be winning that game. The season starts slowly. It's a game per week as opposed to two per week, which we saw pretty much from after the World Cup finished. So there's a game at Wolves, there's a game against Forest, against Tottenham. I spoke to lots of people on the tour, spoke to lots of players, and they are confident, genuinely confident. I'm sure they would have said they were confident a year ago, and then they lost the opening two games against Brighton and Brentford. But I believe that the team is better than a year ago. All sorts of questions. Rasmus Højlund, how is he going to do? Who's going to start? Has Mason Mount done enough to start? Who's going to be the right back out of Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Diogo Dalot? I don't think those questions have been decided yet by the manager, but I think Manchester United are in pretty good shape, and Wolves at home should be a good start to the season for the team.
What would constitute a good season this year?
Good question, and I'm just sort of formulating my answer to that, but I have been thinking about it a lot, and I'm going to say more points than last year in the league, more goals, another cup, and a decent run in the Champions League. But with a fair wind, you never know. I also think that rivals are going to be stronger. I think Liverpool won't be as bad as last season. Neither will Chelsea. Tottenham look like they've got a good attack-minded manager. Manchester City will clearly be favourites once again. So Ten Hag made Old Trafford a fortress last year. Manchester United have got to improve away from home against the good teams, and I spoke to several players about that, and they know that's the one area where United have got to be more consistent within matches, and let's see if that happens. There's a game against Tottenham coming up. Although actually Tottenham were the only team in the top 9 who didn't beat Manchester United at home last season because, it's Tottenham.
Or are Tottenham any different this season, your perspective? The Kane thing is kind of rumbling on. It looks like he's going to stay now.
Yeah, it does. He was Eric Ten Hag's first choice target towards the end of the season, but United looked at the probable wage cost of Harry Kane, as well as the transfer fee, as well as what they thought would be Tottenham's reluctance to sell to a rival, and just thought, we do not want a whole summer chasing a player like we did with Frenkie de Jong a year ago. So United looked at Rasmus Højlund. There wasn't a huge number of strikers to go for. and also switched attention to Andre Onana, one of the 4 goalkeepers Manchester United were looking at, but he was the first choice, and he came in. I'm told he's making a good impression, although he was lobbed at the weekend against Lons. Get your mistakes out of the way early. So it's a big, important season, but Ten Hag genuinely has the support of the fans and of the players, and I spoke to enough of them to know that that is the case, but he's going to be judged by results and performances.
Combined 60 million West Ham bid from Maguire and McTominay is quite interesting.
It's very interesting. It's starting to look like a serious bid, isn't it? When I saw a bid of 20 million, I thought there's no way Manchester United are going to sell for that, a player who costs so much. But when you start going 50, 60, and you look at it from the player's perspective, they will be thinking, am I going to play? And the answer is probably not, unless there's going to be injuries, but not just one injury, 2, 3 or 4 injuries. And they're both good players who can play Premier League football. Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay are both internationals, very important ones for Scotland, for England. They need to be playing football. We've got the European Championships next year. All along, Harry said he wants to stay at United and fight for his place. And I'm sure on the record he would say that as well, because he's got a contract, and I don't think any rival club will be paying him what he's on at Manchester United. But let's be realistic. I would say that both of those players would move on. And West Ham do have money as well, because they got all that cash in for Declan Rice. So I think we'll see more activity in the transfer market. And if those two go and Manchester United get some serious money in, then we may see some more incoming players to Old Trafford.
Just briefly, from Manchester United perspective, how disappointed are you haven't gotten Rice?
Well, he's very good, isn't he? Don't know how good he is. I interviewed him a couple of years ago. I thought he was a pretty switched on lad.
Was this before or after he abandoned Ireland?
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I didn't want to tread near that delicate diplomatic issue and just remind
find him in Hartigans.
He won't be going to Hartigans anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, I'm not. He's not one of them where you're thinking we've really missed out there. But I know he's a very good player. But yeah, it's not a big deal for United fans.
Last one for you, Andy. I wanted to bring you in on this just from the perspective of what the reaction is over here. This is the back of the Sun. Time bomb, RAF rage, dangerous new rules, KDB added, minutes don't make sense. I genuinely do wonder sometimes, do the people running the game give any crap whatsoever about the players who actually play it, who are totally overworked, who basically are asked to do this ridiculous roster and now have an extra 10% on top all of a sudden?
Money triumphs every single time, and always has done. And it was pretty uncharacteristic of Rafa Varane to come out and say that. I think he's right in saying that. And maybe he knows his own body better than most players, and he knows he can't be playing 2 games a week. He's someone who's picked up a lot of injuries, but there will be more and more demands put on players because money will see out, and the pushback from clubs or authorities, well, you're getting paid a huge amount of money. But I'm with the players on this one. And we saw it the weekend in the Championship in England. Games were lasting 22 minutes longer. We saw it in the World Cup final. I'm not sure what it was like in Ireland. I was going to go to Shamrock Rovers on Sunday, but it was just a bit too close to the finish of the game of the Aviva. But I will be back to see them.
You're an absolute legend, Andy. You're like, because
an extra hour definitely. That was the kickoff time 4 till 6.
Hour.
7 would have been okay.
We need to get to a Friday night game, because that's when the Sunday games they just don't have quite the same. But I guarantee you will love a League of Ireland game.
I've heard all about them. I know and respect the rivalries. And touching on what you said earlier, when Man United used to come over in the 90s, I saw them play at places like Shelbourne. Although I was told it's Shells, and anyone who says Shelbourne is posh. I was corrected at the weekend on that one. So I know about the rivalry, St Patrick's, Bohemians, and I know that there's a very rich football culture there. And I see some shots of the atmosphere, and I really respect it. I know English football is really well supported in the Republic of Ireland, but I think it's also important that the domestic league does well, and I keep an eye on it. Cork City, I saw Dundalk a few years ago. I know there's been some pretty compelling stories there.
Yeah, Dan actually brought his mother for her 80th birthday to the Shelbourne Hotel, which is this posh shop in town. When it's my mother's turn, she'll either be going to watch Shelburne or she'll be going to watch the dogs at Shelburne Park. First, after sorry, lost my train of thought here. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
A bit like the dogs I back. So let's hear from Cork Camogie boss Matthew Toomey on the All-Ireland triumph. After that, we have Tim Clancy in studio.
There was never going to be a question of complacency. Like, we knew that. Like, we spoke about it. Like, Waterford were after beating us, and Waterford were after beating a great Tipperary team, and look, so there was no question about it. And look, we've a lot of hurt in us after losing the titles that we lost, and there's a lot of hurt there from 5 years. We haven't won in All Ireland, and look, you know, we had to put that right. And look, we had a lot of experience. 12 of the lads have an All Ireland medal, but 20 haven't. So look, they were up to drive them on.
It did feel like there was a lot kind of emptied, unloaded. This was your moment and you shined.
Yeah, it was. Look, we just knew we had an opportunity, and like, you know, as I say, there was a lot of hurt there, so we had to let it go today and not have any regrets after the game. And look, yeah, we're, as you can hear there, yeah, there's people happy. Like, yeah.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
OTB Rugby.
And if everyone in Ireland's a wee bit worried, well, you've got yourselves to blame, because it's your fault, because it's what you did to them in July last year that poked the bear properly. You know that.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB SPORTS app now. OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Yeah, that was Matthew Toomey. Little known fact, Tim Clancy's actually a very good hurler. Or at least you played a bit anyway.
I wouldn't say very good, Johnny. A defensive corner forward would be my position.
Where did you play? Is this an app boy, is it? Or
Kiltale, down just outside Trim there. So
you were playing when you were Drogheda manager, weren't you? You were like doing bits in the summer and that.
Occasionally,
yeah. Rocking up for
whenever they're stuck. Yeah, the juniors now. Nowhere near the seniors.
So it's interesting because we're speaking to Sarah about like trying to get camogie sold. Like, you've kids as well. Like, so in your part of the world, what are they likely to? I know one of your daughters has gotten into horse and that, but what are they likely to be introduced to locally? I suppose in Meath.
Listen, I think Trim's got unbelievable facilities in the GAA club. I'd say it's one of the best in the country for a club team. It's remarkable setup they have up there, and there's strong, obviously, GAA connections in Meath and Kiltale, where we were living for 5 years there, where the kids go to school. is just all hurling and camogie. There's no football in that little village, so I think you play for either Dunsany or Manalvi in the football if you're from Kiltale. So that area, I think they had a few there in the intermediate All-Ireland final there on Sunday as well, from the club as well. So yeah, there's a good chance you'll end up, if you're definitely from Kiltale, you'll definitely be playing hurling or camogie.
Say you're a kid, right? Facilities got to matter, right? So and I was actually delighted with the Icelandic lads who went to Oriel last week and said, what do they call it? Like, they don't
pigsty.
Pigsty, and they're like, the pitch is a disgrace. They were saying, notwithstanding, and you're looking at like Breiðablik, who are like third in Iceland, whatever, and Shamrock Rovers go over there. I wasn't there, but by all accounts, really, really modern facilities, sports kind of facilities. And I don't know, Tim, in this country, we're so far behind, not only in football, but so many sports. You're like, we've so much money in this country, we can't seem to get our facilities right.
No, I think even if you look at, there's a huge project for Park Talton in Meath, and a lot of the clubs as well would be probably the same, haven't been touched, football or GAA in the last maybe 15, 20, 30 years even. I think the League of Ireland, we've banged that drum enough now that the facilities are the main thing that we have to try and improve. And
facilities or training facilities?
All facilities.
Yeah.
All facilities, and I know managers will prioritise training facilities, and also others will probably higher up will prioritise this stadia. But I think as soon as both improve massively, and that's only going to help with government funding, you'll see probably a better product for.
I'm going to ask you a very, very personal question before Dan gets in. What football have you been watching since you left the role in Inchicore? Have you been watching League of Ireland? Are you?
Yeah, no, I'll watch a game most weekends. I'll have the LOI TV on. If I don't go, I've been to Drogheda a few times. The Bows against Rovers. Bit of a bandwagon jumper like yourself there, Johnny. Only big games to go to, but
that's not.
To be fair, that's a bit harsh on Johnny. He doesn't go to games at all.
But like the Irish players now, like the likes of, you're looking at the Southampton situation, and like, will you start engrossing yourself now in all the kind of the English and Scottish games as well, with this massive Irish interest, particularly at championship level, I suppose?
Yeah, I think last weekend you've seen probably a good bulk of our players getting the first game of the season in the championship and SPL or whatever else. So I'll take in a good few games. The ones that are on the telly and the ones you can get access to. So I watched a bit of the Cardiff and Leeds game, and Callum O'Dowd was doing really well at left back, and fortunately they let in a few late goals or whatever, the late goal that cost them the point. But it's good that actually football's back, and you can see that football in the UK is back. You can see that the buzz about the place again, and a lot of the Irish players are getting going again now.
Because I know I chatted to you briefly last week about Chidozie Ogbene, who you played against, who's gone to play Premier League football this year, and I know you would have worked with Luke McNally, who Johnny likes to bring up in the show maybe every 30 minutes or so, but he's gone on loan now to Stoke. And I just wonder, from your experience of spending a lot of your career in the UK as a player, and then seeing players here and knowing what it takes, that I think it's funny, I think there's a correlation. You always spoke about Luke about how athletically he's very good. Ogbene, you spoke about playing against him when he was 18, 19, and you could see his athleticism. Is that almost the number one thing we're looking at with some of our Irish players now in terms of making that transition to the UK and seeing the ones that can hopefully make it over there?
I think that's where football's going. Yeah, I think if I've spoke to Owen Doyle about it quite a bit as well, and Doyle was flying in the SPL and flying in League 1 and League 2 level, and then when he stepped up to the Championship, he said it's just a little bit different, where they're all physically very, very good. I'd say it probably is the first thing that someone asks you as soon as what's this player like, and then the next question will be, how big is he? Athletic, quick, and it sort of goes down that route. And then I think to be playing at that level and not be athletic, you have to be absolutely phenomenal. And I think the ones like Ogbene, who left, he was at Cork, obviously he's a young lad, and went to Limerick to get game time, and I played against him, and he was athletically very, very good, and he's kicked on again.
Ogbene.
Yeah,
that's mad when you think about it.
When he was at Limerick, when I was at Bray last season, I was there. So, and then you'll see the likes of Luke and young lads like that as well. And I think that's why I spoke so very highly of Adam Murphy as well.
I was just going to say, he's
athletically very, very good.
Because people will ask you, because at St Pat's Boss, you worked with Adam Murphy, with Sam Curtis, even with Mason Melia, sort of laterally, who is he's 15, so it's insane, but he still is on everyone's radar. But they are the attributes you have to be looking at.
Yeah, but I think Mason's probably ticked a box already at 15 that don't have to worry about his size. He's a big kid. He's probably 6'1".
Yeah.
He's athletically very good, and he's obviously going to grow and be stronger. So clubs don't have to worry about signing potential. Going, is he going to be physically big enough? Because Mason will develop into a very, very strong young man, and ability wise he's exceptional. You see what he's done at Pats, and obviously Big Dinty's given him his debut, and he's scored a couple of goals this season. So I think it's a question mark that clubs will have. They're investing money, are they physically going to be able to be good enough? And when you have someone like Evan Ferguson, probably 4 years ago when Brighton signed him, he was physically already capable of playing men's football, and I think Mason ticks the same box there.
Meads, Evan Ferguson, of course, there wasn't too many Mead lads playing over in the UK for a while, and he's sort of killed you all now, hasn't he, really, Evan?
No, he's Mead lads as well.
Jamie McGrath, you've got Darragh Lennon.
There's been a glut of them now,
It must be weird watching, if you watch Pats or if you watch them in Europe, and it just must be strange. What's that been like? Because say their European performances against Dudelange, they obviously got away with it a bit in the first leg, great moments in the second leg, but I was thinking you would have set them up a bit differently, because you would have been maybe I was thinking Pats in Europe last year over to Pats in Europe this year, you're different managers now.
Yeah, listen, I don't think results would have been any different with me there. Listen, I might have maybe looked at something different, but didn't he had a big say when I was there as well. So, and he has them absolutely flying. They're flying in the league, the form that they're on. So, I think he'll be a little bit disappointed in the European game. The goals they gave up were probably ones that, as a manager, you can't allow for. You can't sort of be on the pitch and make decisions for players. And I know the second leg, I only got the second half of the second leg, and when Adam Murphy scored, I thought there was only going to be one team that was going to go on and win it. And then, there was a poor decision by a centre back to play straight into the midfield, and then to compound that, he flew in and tried to win the ball back, and they go in and get a goal and sort of killed the momentum of the game Pat's had. So
this is John Daly you're talking about, just if you're not aware who Daly is. John Daly took over from Tim, but I suppose there's been a lot of focus on the European performances, and I love how John Daly went with a lot of young players in Europe and gave them experience. Some of them revelled in it, some of them learned from it. Shamrock Rovers didn't really have that option, or didn't use that option, and it was really, really limp. In fairness, we got to say, they scored one goal over the whole European campaign, and that was a penalty.
Yeah, but again, we're looking at individual results this season and saying, right, where did it go wrong and what went wrong with Pats? And I think Doodling were in the group stage twice in the last 4 years. So they're a good team. They weren't a bad side, yeah. They're a good team. Both teams that Rovers played, to get the first round of the Champions League once, it's a tough game to play, and when you lose that, you get Ferencváros in the second round, or your next European game, and I think they were in the group stage last year, and they're a good team. And you see the setup when you go over and you're looking at the game on the telly, and there's a 25,000 seater stadium, and it's a big club. So I think we've probably been spoiled for it. Last year was an exceptional year in Europe, because I think Sligo won a lot of games under Rustler, and we got through to the third qualifying round. Rovers got to the group stage, so it was a really good year. And then obviously you're only left now with Derry in the third qualifying round this year, so you're going to have that. Once a picture overall for the I suppose take over a 5, maybe 10 year period looks more positive, you're going the right way then.
I mean, Derry, when you think about it, the Derry City story, I know you have strong links in Belfast, Tim, and the prospect of Derry playing in Windsor Park now is. If you haven't
heard, this is absolutely class. Yeah. So when I heard in the second half of the game, when Derry looked like they might go through a basket case, such an enjoyable game in Finland, I was on to a Derry fan, and he's like, they're not going to be able to play this in Brandywell, and I was like, they got to play it in Windsor, and he's like, no, it's going to be Tala. I was like, Windsor would be unbelievable. It may happen. This would be so cool.
Yeah, and again, you wouldn't think that would have been the case. Well, the reason why they're in the League of Ireland is probably because of the trouble there was maybe 30 years ago when they were playing in the North, or 40 years ago, whenever it was. So
40 to 50 now, really.
Yeah,
it was 1972 when they left the Irish League, because
50 years ago,
the other clubs in the Irish League they voted against going to play in the Brandywell on account of their security concerns. And so Derry did try and get back in a couple of times subsequently, and again the feeling was, the clubs wouldn't go and play in the Brandywell, and clearly there's a whole issue of how Derry's relationship with Belfast, and the whole the issue there. So I remember when Derry played Linfield in 2006 in a Southampton Cup tie, and how big even that was for Derry to go and play a competitive game there. But for Derry to host the game there effectively, to actually, for a team from Kazakhstan to go there, and this is, you watch a game from afar, like that team that Doc played last week, KA, they were actually playing a couple of hours away from their home ground, but to us, and they were like, the Doc were playing away against KA in their home pitch. People around the world might be looking at Derry are playing on there's their home ground, in Windsor Park. I mean, it's extraordinary.
It's such a cool
the first time I was in Windsor Park, you go in and into one of the function rooms there, and
there's the Queen.
There's a big portrait of the Queen there,
now, of course.
And and Derry playing there. I mean, it would be an incredible thing to happen.
I remember my first experience of Windsor was going to watch, I think Cork City were playing there, and I got a lift back. It was the day that the smoking ban was introduced in Northern Ireland, I remember, and I was on the Shankill because the Linfield fans had laid out this kind of reception for the Cork fans, and I remember getting a lift back into town with a busload of Linfield fans that I'd never met before, and I was meeting a kid from County Down, a Catholic kid, and I remember when he saw the bus arriving, he was like, kind of, what the hell is this? And it has moved on so much, I think, since then.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, Pat Fennan had a stint up there again as director of football, and a lot of the players in their academy teams now are coming from Catholic areas. I think Pat's gone on record in saying that the setup that Linfield have is phenomenal. My nephew actually plays there as well, and he's doing quite well. And
who's he playing with?
He plays for Linfield's, I think it's 15s or 16s.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's over in.
Where's he from?
He's from he's from the Short Strand, is where his dad's from.
He's a Short Strand kid playing with Linfield's underage.
Well, his dad's from there. Yeah, he's living over in I think it's the Antrim Road area now. So but there's loads of the kids, and
this is a big deal.
It probably goes now that they get treated really, really well there, because Linfield see that there's a massive talent pool in all areas, and I suppose to keep the Catholic kids, they probably treat them really, really well, and might prioritise signing them and than kids in their own area, because they know the kids in their own area will sign there anyway.
I'm sorry, Tim. Look at the facilities. Look at Windsor Park.
Yeah,
you want to play, like, it's such a cool ground. And like, Dan, the crowd that Derry could get there. Imagine like the interested onlookers type. Because I was up. I don't know if you were at the game, Linfield Carabeg a couple of years ago. Stevie O'Donnell was with me at the game, I remember. And there's such a buzz that night in the ground. But outside the ground, there were like, I remember there were like UVF flags.
Oh yeah, no.
So it's like, this is the heartland of loyalists. What is it? South Belfast. So there's a lot going on here.
No, this is a sort of a news story game as much as anything, and particularly
if it happens.
If it happens, it's in UEFA. UEFA have to decide, but it does seem like all the various associations are fine with it, which is progress in itself.
I think there may be an issue that the Kazakh players are trying to get Irish passports and blah blah blah. Anyway,
well, it could be. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's actually can be. Well, the Derry did benefit in the previous round from a couple of African players not being able to. And I did look at the top all squad. They do have an African striker, so I don't know. Maybe it suits if it's in Belfast, but
it is bad.
The bigger point, Tim, I suppose, is for Derry to try and keep the tie alive, to bring it home. I mean, they could have been playing Basel, and I think there would have been a sense of Basel that, get end of the road. All of a sudden you're playing a team that, okay, they're clearly good because they've beaten Basel, but it doesn't seem as intimidating on paper. And like, Derry have good European experience running through their dressing room now that everyone seems to be fit. I mean, what do you, I don't know, it's hard to say without knowing much about the opposition, but what do you think about their prospects?
Yeah, but that could also play into the hands of probably expectation levels of Shamrock Rovers. They should be in the group stage every year now because of how well they did the last year.
Yeah.
So because this team on paper maybe isn't as good as Basel, people are saying, oh well, they've got a good chance of winning. So I've spoke to Higgy briefly about them, and he says, listen, they're a very good team.
They press very heavily,
press aggressively. So again, you're going to go into the game, and listen, if you're going through this round, it's going to have to be, as you said, bring the game back to Windsor or whatever it is.
If you're playing, so if you're managing, so if you're Rory Higgins in that situation and you're going away from home and you're playing against a team that you know is going to press really heavily against you, how do you try and approach it then with Derry, with the personnel you have? Like, what are you thinking then? How do you try and go a little bit more direct at times, or what instructions are you giving to your players in that scenario?
Well, there's multiple ways you can do it. Obviously you have to without seeing them, you have to see what type of players they have, and if they're athletic in the middle of the pitch, or if the centre halves are not the most mobile or whatever. I'd imagine, as you're saying, that you could beat the press and hit Cavan up top if you wanted to go with a big man who holds the ball in very well, and then just get your legs like Mickey Duffy and other ones off him. Well, listen, Higgy's done exceptionally well this season and last season
as well. In fairness, look at Kavanagh's role last week. Was a bit part player. Graydon he brought in, who then was sold, and they weren't at all concerned from that game in Finland. They really did approach it trying to score goals. Like,
yeah, and I think if you look at that, Keane Kavanagh was in the first division, obviously, with Waterford, and Graydon was in the first division with Longford, and Higgy's brought them into a team that's challenging, winning cups and challenging the top of the league, and it's brave, and you can see that obviously it's one of the things that Rory's very good at is spotting a player that will fit into his system and do well in his teams, and that's why the young boy McMullen, I think it is, that's coming on the way,
great signing,
looks very, very good. And it's always the sign of a good signing is Stephen Kenny was excellent at Dundalk. When he lost Horgan, he brings in Mickey Duffy, and when he lost, I think it was someone else, he brought in another, like I think Andy Boy left and Vemland or whatever his name was came in.
Yeah, he was a good player,
and he brought in players when he lost good players.
Yeah,
I think Richie Towell left, and then McElhenney came in. So there was a transition and nobody ever spoke about the player that left, and that's where Stephen was unbelievable at Dundalk, and it looks like Higgy's got that as well.
Before we wrap up, there has been a lot of soul searching about the sort of indifferent results, whatever, and Derry are flying the flag, but the point has been made, like, we are losing a lot of players because that's just the way it is. Now you can lose the likes of Curtis, who may go obviously in Mealy or whatever, but it's that tier of players then who are going to League One. So how do we sort of make up the gap then and get the transfer fees in, or at least have the players coming through? Because Shamrock Rovers seem to be in a bit of no man's land in Europe this year, where none of their players were coming through from the academy, but they lost lines in Mandroyo and they couldn't cope, if that makes sense.
Yes, it's very hard. Rovers have the best academy in the country, but it's very hard to get into Shamrock Rovers first team because they are so good. And it's brilliant bringing academy players through and having a pathway there, but they have to be good enough to get into Stephen Bradley's team, and they haven't got to a group stage and won 3 league titles in a row for no reason. It's because they've got exceptional players. Like if you're a young attacking midfielder at Shamrock Rovers in the academy, you have to get rid of Jack Byrne and Richie Towell and Graham Burke and Liam Burt. Now he gets his first goal after his injury the other day. Like, so Rovers have a lot of exceptionally good players, but yeah, you want a pathway for kids, and I know what you're saying is get better transfer fees in. I think they have to have a blanket agreement across the league to
You would advocate that?
Well, the sell-on or get-out clauses in contracts. I think if every club in the league says no, we're not doing them, and everyone has to stick for it, and then you'll get better transfers for our players.
Dan?
Yeah, well, I think the only issue with that is the players then will just not sign longer term contracts and try and go and freeze, but there still is compensation that comes with that. That is, if you're going to decent clubs, that compensation is substantial enough. Now I think some clubs individually are not doing them anymore, like Bows aren't doing them, Cork aren't doing them, but I suppose representatives will find a way to try and get around it, but
yeah, 100% they will, but we can't cry about transfer fees if clubs are putting the clauses in, and I can understand that if you want to get a player like a smaller team to compete with Rovers or one of the bigger teams and they can't do it financially, they can say, listen, we'll let them go for cheaper, but until that's out of the game, I think it's going to be the same for transfer fees, and as you're saying, losing players to Lincolns and League One clubs.
Kev Doherty's obviously been a long time ally of yours. What did you make of the situation where he was seemingly just tapped up by Cork?
Listen, I'm not surprised. I think right now he's the manager of the year. I think what he's doing at Drogheda it's remarkable. They've got Andrew Wogan, a 17-year-old in goals. I'm not too sure how many other managers in the Premier Division will play a 17-year-old. Manny Adebiega playing centre back, and he's got to move to Norwich. It's just year after year Kev's churning out results and overperforming to what he should be, but they've a very, very good squad, and I'm not surprised that Cork came calling, and I'm also not surprised that Kev turned it down, because I think things at Drogheda are probably changing, dynamic in the background, and he probably sees maybe next season will be a bit different there.
Sadly, we're running out of time, but two of the lads, the lieutenants you brought in, are absolutely thriving as managers. So you're a good judge of a football brain.
You'd love to be my assistant if I get another job, wouldn't you?
Where are you going? That's my last
everyone
question.
Wants, yeah.
Where is Big Tim? The next one is the big one. The Linfield job, if it ever came up, but that's the one for you.
Well, listen, probably play our home games in Derry, don't we?
What are you actively pursuing future gainful, meaningful employment?
Listen, I look to see if there's anything that comes up, and if a club, I'll apply for things that I'd be interested in, and if they'd be willing enough to give me another go, I'd be delighted to get back in. So we'll just have to sit and wait and see if that comes up.
Are you patient? Like, are you sort of getting antsy now? I'm sure you get out of it at first, and it's great to get a little bit of a break. But
yeah, well, it was the first time I was out of football for 21 years since I left school, really. Apart from an injury I had at St Johnstone before I came back to Ireland. So yeah, it is. You get first few weeks is grand, and then she starts giving more and more jobs around the house. So
Shawneen,
I'm desperate now to get myself another club.
Does Shawneen want you to get a new club now? Is she like the time is
any job now? This days she wants me to get.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it's been good.
Because the reality of the League of Ireland shift. So you had a night shift, wasn't this? When you were Drogheda manager, it always reminded me of like third Simpsons and final Simpsons reference of the day when Homer had two jobs and the door in the quickie mart was just hitting his head and he couldn't wake up. He was that tired. And I was always thinking of you, like Tim Clancy, just like trying to think of tactics and the door is just hitting his head.
Yeah, listen, I'm not the only person that works two jobs or whatever. So yeah, that was just the reality of it back. It
was a night shift.
So it was a night shift, yeah. But yeah, that was 3 years ago or something. So yeah, listen, you do what you have to do.
Thanks for coming in.
Oh, what, Johnny?
Yeah, we did have a couple of comments just on facilities. It's pretty simple. Dundalk shouldn't get a licence until they fix the pitch, from Peter Aim. And Quirky, 1980, the big construction firms have made it impossible to build anything in Ireland. They gobble up any government funding as profit. And the one thing I will say is, I would have a lot of sympathy for clubs. Everything is so expensive to do anything now. That is going to be a problem. And we also have a comment from Mark Kendi. Sligo Rovers lost Johnny Kendi, Keena and now Mata. Every year for the last 3 years, unless there are proper money, that's just a circle. It's really difficult for Sligo Rovers, who in my view are not entirely out of the relegation struggle on the back of losing Mata. So on tomorrow's show, Ger and Shane are back with Leinster's second row Ross Maloney, who will be in studio. We're going to have a Liverpool preview ahead of the season. Andy Mitten forecasting that they have improved. Plenty more besides. Right now though, it's Gordon Darcy and James Downey reviewing Ireland's win over Italy alongside JD. Have a terrific Tuesday.
When we think of Caelan Doris, I suppose the feeling might have been before the game that we need cover for Josh van der Fleer if he ever does get injured at open side, and Caelan was just outstanding last night, wasn't he, James?
Oh, every time he plays, like you kind of go, he can't back up what he's done before. He's a breath of fresh air, really, when he plays, no matter where you play him. I always sometimes think that when he plays at 6, when they have him there, he's a little bit quieter when he goes to 8, but he even showed last night. I know he went to number 8 now when Conan went off, but I just think that his footwork before contact is second to none. It gets through past the first man the whole time. His appetite for work as well around breakdown. He gets turnovers, crucial turnovers. I know we always talk about Tyg Byrne and turnovers, but last night I was very impressed with Doris, and everything he does seems to be golden at the moment. So look, he's a top quality player that we have, and we're lucky to have someone like that. And he said it last night, he's been kind of learning from Josh a bit and how to play the role. For him, I'm sure he wants to be starting number 8, and 7's going to be a backup position, and hopefully he mightn't have to play there, but someone of his quality was immense last night, and as you say, we're lucky to have someone like that on the side.
We have Gordon Darcy on the line now with James Downey. Gordon, how are you?
Not too bad, lads.
Good to talk to you. What did you feel about that last night, Gordon?
I was actually at it. Got the opportunity to go. Brought my young lad to his first international.
Ah, great.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Was he? What's his name? And was he really buzzed about it?
Lennon. Was he buzzed about it? He was buzzed about the club orange he got going in, which definitely helped with it. But himself and his friend Otto, they had the try sign made and go Ireland go. So yeah, they were pretty. They were pretty impressed with the amount of tries. We didn't get rained on, so that was a bonus.
Do you remember your first game, Gordon? Do you?
My first game of rugby, or my first international?
First international you went to yourself?
Oh, the first one I went to, it was in school. The old schoolboy tickets in school. So probably fourth year was probably when we were allowed to go. So you had to get a signature from the parents. You got the day bus up from school, and you had the decision to make. You either sell your schoolboy ticket and probably got £50 for it, or you actually went to the match. So the diehards always went to the match. I was probably 50-50 whether I went to the match or I took the £50.
What did you do?
Well, it was 50-50 whether I went, depending on who it was. I wasn't quite a diehard at that stage.
Do you remember what the first game was, though? Who they played?
I think it was a Wales match in '96, and I'm probably going to have that wrong, but I think Wales was the first match I went to.
James, which was the first match you went to?
I think it was I think I went to one of the World Cup in '91. I think when it was on in Ireland. I wasn't at the Australia game now.
Well, you'd remember that one. You'd remember that.
Yeah, I think it was a Five Nations game then. Would have been Five Nations back then. But yeah, no, I agree with Gordon. He used to get those schoolboy tickets, and you'd be like very confused.
Your gold dust.
And if you could sell them, you'd make a fortune. Yeah. Not anymore.
How did you feel we did last night, Gordon?
I think it was reflective of the team that was picked. It was very disjointed. You could see created opportunities, partnerships didn't work, that little connections. So nobody had a particularly bad game, but the team probably only got a 5 or 6 out of 10 compared to the high bar we're used to. So it was just a first match blowout, really. I'd say for a couple of people, they needed to do more.
Who were they?
And then just the guys, the couple of names you've already talked about, Sean to the top. Kellen Darcy is just, his second best position is now 7 by the looks of things.
Who needed to do more, Gordon?
Well, like the guys on the fringes, really, didn't they? I think definitely, like you were talking about the back three, I would say Stockdale is probably the one who did the most good things, but also equally frustrating the more poor things. The game didn't really fall for Keith Earls, and really he needed a big game, and there's pressure coming on Jimmy O'Brien as well in that kind of utility spot. So definitely there. There wasn't a huge amount of cohesiveness. Centres, I don't think they clicked. The 10, 12, 13 didn't click either. I don't think Stuart McCloskey put as good a foot forward as he would have liked to. He was fine, but didn't stand out. Robbie Henshaw looked rusty as well, but yeah, outside of that, there's everybody, as I said, didn't play poorly, but nobody only 2 or 3 players really put their mark on the game.
It was interesting, Andy Farrell's comments. He singled out the second rows, James, for praise. Joe McCarthy on his first start with the captain Ian Henderson.
Yeah, I thought Joe was pretty impressive. Everything he did. He's a big lad. I think you could see when he's coming onto that ball, he offers that a little bit more. And Henderson, I think, was super in how he led. I think there was pressure on him last night to perform. I think he's another one who's obviously going to be under pressure, not to get in the plane per se, but just to break into that second row partnership that Ireland already have. And yeah, I don't think Joe did himself any harm last night in that regard. And as I say, he didn't miss any tackles. He fronted up and he just goes about his business quietly. There's nothing too flashy about him, but everything he does well and does correctly. And Andy Farrell seems to have a lot of that. Sorry.
I'd say they covered up a few cracks for Ireland in that they had a bit of a power game that they were able to go to. So 3 of the tries come from close, that 22 entries off penalties. And you're absolutely right. Ian Henderson looks like he's fit and properly fit, not just kind of cobbled together. It looks like he's had a good pre-season and he's coming in. And, it's that age-old thing. You can't teach a man to be 125, 130 kilos, and Joe McCarthy is that. And he was able, those 2 guys were, I think that was a key difference for Ireland. When they had scoring opportunities, they were able to fall back on that power game that they had. And I think you're dead right. Both second rows were really, really good.
Gordon, you've been the soldier before 2007, 2011 Rugby World Cup warm-ups and build-ups and preps. And what are the do's and don'ts from being a man who's lived this?
It's horrible. It's almost like it depends on which. It depends on which category you're in. There are players who know they're on the plane, barring injury. Obviously, never going to go into that, but you do have to have a certain level of confidence in your own ability. So there's probably somewhere between 15, 16 players, 17 maybe, that are pretty sure they're going if they don't get injured. For them, it is about trying to peak at the games that matter. If it's that first one or the second one, trying to go into that. And for the other players, it's trying to put yourself on as good a footing as possible. So 2015 was probably I played the warm-up games that I had to try and impress, and it just didn't work for me. I remember playing against Scotland and legs were gone, felt heavy, I just couldn't do anything. Whereas previous, warm-ups going into them, it was like, okay, well, I know I'm playing 20 minutes, 30 minutes here, I'm off, and I'm just getting match practice in, regardless how well I play or how I don't play. So there was an awful lot of players there playing at the weekend that were trying to impress, and you could see that a couple of passes didn't go, or a little over eager line being run, and they're trying to get the game to come to them. So in a lot of ways, it does come back to the almost those things you talk about with the under 13s, and you're kind of saying you don't chase the game, you've got to play the game, help the team to win, and when you have your opportunity, the 1 or 2 opportunities of the game, you've got to take them. But sometimes games just don't fall for you, and that's really frustrating for a player.
So for Andy Farrell and Paul O'Connell and the coaching staff, they need to manage the anxieties almost. They need to be psychologists as well as coaches to a degree here.
I think so, yeah. Like, again, it all depends on what conversations they're having with people. And by the sounds of things and reading between the lines and how settled this camp is, there's very clear conversations having with people. And they know where they are, in not necessarily in the pecking order, but in this, let's call it a squad, that, you know, that where they are in the pecking order of getting into the World Cup squad, what they need to do, what they don't need to do. And everybody is on their own little mission, their own little opportunity to impress the coaches. So they know what they want, they know what they need to do, but then you have to do that within the confines of the game plan, and you have to be able to look at it. So like I went back and looked at the game this morning, and my initial thing was like Craig Casey and Jack Crowley, for argument's sake, were a little underwhelming when I watched them in live. And then I went back and looked at it and actually went, well, actually, they were actually very good. They were very composed. They didn't chase the game. And I thought they managed their time on the field really, really, really well. And that's all you can ask for them. But they're two guys who definitely need more game time. And I think that's probably coming to the fore as well. You're going to go, and there's certain people in there that need more game time. And I think Jacob Stockdale will be another one that would benefit from another run out to go, well, is he worth the gamble on that last spot?
In 2007, Gordon, it didn't work out for us at all. We didn't get out of the pool in the World Cup. In 2011, we lost the warm-up games, but we won the pool, and then we lost to Wales. As we know, we were caught against Wales. Could you, when you're looking back at these World Cups, could you pinpoint, wasn't happy with the prep, or the prep was this, or we did everything right in the prep? Can you, I suppose, link a warm-up phase with the tournament itself?
Sorry, what was that last bit?
Can you link what happens in a warm-up phase from your own experience?
I don't think
so. No.
Well, I think you'll get a good indication of the form of what form. Yeah, no, we'll give you a good indication. Like if you go back to 2015, you know, the warm-up games were a good indication of when we went. 2019 was the same. 2007, really good indication of where we were. And 2011, you know, probably a little bit of luck. So these games, there will be a template for that, and it is. And you look across all the games from the weekend: England, Wales, ourselves, Scotland. Like a lot of teams showed. Well, Wales showed some interesting form. I don't think we had enough frontline players in that team to say that was an indicative performance for the World Cup. I'd say you'll get a closer view of that against England.
It's funny, James, isn't it? We're kind of playing catch up against the Southern Hemisphere teams because they're in the Rugby Championship, competitive rugby. You know, if we were playing this after the Six Nations, it'd be much easier. If we're playing a World Cup, say in April or May, than we are now. We almost have to start again. Or is it a case that you can feel that with the conditioning and the technical side, and players obviously playing for their provinces, that we can get up to speed quite quickly?
Look, you see the Southern Hemisphere sides, and they have had some tough fixtures. All right, I do think that the players got a little bit of time off, and then they've been brought kind of straight back into the camp. So they haven't kind of switched off completely. I'm sure they're still going strong. I think it's an interesting look on how Andy Farrell has approached this World Cup as well. And you kind of look at on Gatland and how he's put the Wales squad through back into army camps and stuff like that. And this one just seems a lot more relaxed. He's given a lot of autonomy to the players to go off and do things. This week in Portugal, I think the partners and stuff have been flown out. They're obviously playing this game. It just seems a kind of happier camp, and I think with the happier camp, things will work on the field as well, because everyone knows their jobs, everyone knows what they're doing. They've had a bit of time to focus on this. Yes, the only thing that they could be missing out on is potentially minutes against quality opposition, which is going to be interesting this weekend or next weekend, against England, because England will have played Wales twice, and then us, and then I think they play Fiji as well, whilst we're only playing the 3 games. And I know some people have said that we're probably playing a lot, but like it's one strong game, and then we play potentially this game next week against Portugal. Wouldn't read too much into that again, but it's more a case of England, how that looks up, and then we're into Samoa, and then we're suddenly into it. So I think it's enough time to get up to speed. You know, I think if we were peaking a couple of weeks ago, like that's my concern for the All Blacks. they're doing it like they've played bloody well, you know, bar the last game maybe against Australia, but they've played well. It's a bit kind of early. You don't want to be peaking too early, so that's how I kind of look at that situation. And then if we do get out of this group, having played these games and gotten a bit of momentum, it's a case of who you want, or who do you fancy in that. If you fancy France at home, or do you fancy trying to take on the All Blacks?
One thing I really admire about Andy Farrell, Gordon, is attitude. Like, this guy's had such experience. He was a Rugby League World Cup player, reached the final, lost it, played in 2007 at the England Rugby World Cup. It wasn't in the team in the final, but was in the squad when they reached the final in France. Assisted Lancaster in 15, it was a disaster, and maybe unluckily so. Was Don Schmidt's side then in 19, didn't go our way. But he's got a smile on the face of positivity. But I'm sure there's things he'll have taken from all those experiences that will benefit Ireland now in the coming months. That's what we can hope for anyway.
I think so, and I think you kind of asked the question. I'm not sure I answered it well, about coaches needing to be amateur psychologists and agony ants, and they kind of do, because they need to be on the pulse of the squad. And if you kind of reflect on the 2019 experience, there seemed to be a disconnect between the management and the players, the way the players were feeling versus what the management were thinking, and it just, they peaked too early and they never really recovered from it. But there does seem to be that relationship between the players, an awful lot of trust, and that's hard earned. But from players and from the management side of things, I think Andy Farrell brings a huge amount that. Also, I think one of the best and most important not signings but recruitments he made was Paul O'Connell, because you now have two really, really natural leaders within the management team, and they understand that they need to know the players, and that takes energy and it takes time. So they have to spend an awful lot of time with players off the training field to understand them, to what makes them tick, because the one thing that is absolutely guaranteed about coaching is it is not a one size fits all, and a lot of coaches fall into that type of mentality, which is I'll treat everybody the same and everything, but you can't treat everybody the same. You need to get the best out of everybody. So it's kind of communicating what's in your head in slightly different ways, and that's really important. I think Andy Farrell is really good at that, but he also has Paul O'Connell coming in that, so he doesn't have to do everybody. He can hand over a little bit of that, and all the forwards seem to really resonate. They really drawn to Paul. He's that type of player. Like when we were in the squad, and he was captain, and when he wasn't captain, he was just there. He was always the lad in the team room who would park up after dinner with a cup of tea, and people naturally end up coming over for the chat, and people would come in and coming out. But he was always one of those lads who was doing that, because it's a great way of feeling and sensing what the actual mood is like in a camp. So these guys, all those experiences that Andy Farrell's had as a player, and I think what's really, really interesting for me in this is, and I'd love to have played under Andy Farrell, is he was a player, so he also knows what it's like to be at the pinnacle, but also to be on the way out, and he's been that as a coach as well. So now he will have all of that understanding in his head, so he'll be able to engage with players on a different way than they would have previously been treated and dealt with, and I think that's what the players are really responding well to.
James, I suppose players as well can't be thinking about injuries. They could happen, but you can't hold back, can you?
No, certainly can't, and I think that's, look, and Gordon mentioned it, it's kind of like your trials that you have, and in these games where you want to stand out, but then you've got players who are kind of on the plane, and they're just trying to wrap themselves up, and that's when you get a little knock, and that's when you pick up an injury. And you saw it happen to the Italian centre last night. You just got to go out there. If something's going to happen, it's going to happen. You can't worry about it too much, really. Someone's going to fall down, and that's the probability. We might lose a player, but we seem to have the strong enough squad at the moment that we can withstand an injury. But you got to go out there and give it your all, John. I think it's a case you can't leave anything unanswered and said, maybe should have done that. And look, if an injury happened, what can you do? It's part of the game. You could get out on the plane, get over there, play one game, and something happens. So that's what the whole squad situation is. But no, I don't think players can overly read into if they're going to get injured or not.
Meloncello, felt sorry from last night. Hopefully he's all right and will make the World Cup. What do you want to see against England then, Gordon? I would expect Ross Byrne will get a shot.
Yeah, I was thinking about this again because, it's going to be really, really interesting. So Ross Byrne will, most likely start, but you're really in this kind of juxtaposition now where you need Jack Crowley to start games and to play minutes, but you also need to see Ross Byrne. So Ross will likely start against England, and there's an awful lot for me in the balance of who plays where within. I think we know which three are going to the World Cup. So what order they're going to be stacked in, and I think that's really so. Crowley was very composed, wasn't spectacular at the weekend. Didn't really, I think he only had one, maybe two carries in anger at the line. Very composed, didn't chase the game. Everything I managed it quite well. Everything you'd expect. And we know Ross Byrne can. The one criticism of Jack Crowley's performance, I thought the backline attack was pretty was pretty inept in a lot of ways. Inept is probably a strong word, but it wasn't great. The backline didn't click at all. But I thought he had a good game overall. Ross Byrne needs to play, manage, and get the backline moving against England, or he could, depending on how things go, you could see Jack Crowley coming in as in that second place. So there is an awful lot coming in that. But I think in these games we're going to learn more about, I'm going to say, the second half of this 33-man squad that's going to the World Cup rather than the starting players.
Yeah, Gordon Darcy, James Downey, great stuff, really insightful. Thanks so much for your time. We'll look forward to chatting soon ahead of the World Cup.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.